Ottawa.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, April 13th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 9 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The MPP for Ottawa Centre calling on Ontario's Education Minister Stephen Lecce to resign over his handling of the schools throughout the pandemic. It comes on top of multiple other calls from Queen's Park already urging the minister to step down. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge.
Ottawa Centre MPP Joel Harden says the Ontario government choosing to close schools after Minister of Education Lecce announced they would be reopening after the break feels like the province is not taking the virus seriously and is more interested in press conferences. Harden tells me he feels Lecce is being dishonest with the public over safety within schools.
Time and again, Minister Lecce has gotten up in question period, and I've seen it firsthand, and only talked about virus present in some schools where some testing was done, as if that was proof to say they're safe.
The MPP adds he doesn't care what political party someone is from, but feels if they mislead the public or put students and staff in danger, they need to go. Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca is also among those calling for Lecce to be removed and calling on Ford to adopt that party's plan to implement additional safety measures in schools. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 9:01, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Temperatures well above average for us again today. Slight chance of some showers, some sunny breaks, and the high 18 degrees. Tonight, mainly cloudy and 7, and tomorrow some showers, otherwise mainly cloudy and 18. That's the high for today, 18.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 9 degrees. Canada is on track to receive the first of up to 38 million doses of Johnson & Johnson single-shot COVID vaccine in just a couple of weeks now. But the U.S. has recommended this morning a pause in administration of that shot so they can investigate reports of potentially dangerous blood clots.
The CDC and the FDA are studying 6 cases involving women who received the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and a week or so later developed a severe blood clot. The treatment for this type of blood clot is different than usual, and health officials want to pause the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine to give providers time to learn about the potential clot and how to properly treat it. It's 6 cases out of more than 6 million doses administered. Johnson & Johnson said no clear causal relationship has been established between these rare blood clots and its vaccine. Aaron Katersky, ABC News, New York.
City News time, 9:02. Ontario's health minister says the province will add hundreds of critical care beds this week as infection rates soar. Hospitals have been ordered to cancel elective surgery except in what Christine Elliott, the health minister, describes as absolutely life and death cases. The province reported more than 4,400 new cases of COVID-19 yesterday. We are expecting the latest figures from the province within the next hour. Canadian Union of Public Employees far from thrilled with $5.9 billion air deal announced last night between Air Canada and the federal government. CUPE represents some 10,000 Air Canada flight attendants. The union president says the agreement, consisting of repayable loans and a federal equity stake in the airline, is a year late and not nearly enough to support the thousands of flight attendants still reeling from the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic. Flair Air will be adding an Ottawa-Kelowna flight as soon as it is safe. The ultra-low-cost airline planning flights now to BC from Ottawa beginning August 4th, 2 days a week. The flight would cost as little as $59, taxes and fees included, one way. The airline provides COVID coverage and allows passengers to easily change their travel plans. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
When the headlines say X,
he's got the Y.
it's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Out of an abundance of caution, there's more bad news. The FDA and the CDC, both in the USA, are both recommending an immediate pause in the use of the J&J single-dose vaccine. And once more, it is about blood clots. With the J&J vaccine, there have been 6 6 known cases in the United States, all women, all between the ages of 18 and 48. 6 cases. Almost 7 million doses of this vaccine have been administered in the United States. There have been 6 cases. 6 cases that we know of. That is 0.00008% of all doses administered of this particular vaccine. Recommending a pause, both the FDA and the CDC in the United States. This is the single-dose vaccine, which again held great promise for Canada. Okay? No waiting. Right? In the case of Canada, 2-dose vaccines, you wait 4 months between doses. With the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, all you need is 1 shot. And you're done. You don't need to go back in late July or August or September or whenever you will be going back. So as for what any of this means for the vaccination program in Canada, maybe we'll get some details later this morning. The Prime Minister has his 11:30 thing again today. News conference this morning. On the schedule for 11:30. Also attending that news conference will be the country's top health officials, Dr. Tam and Dr. New. You can bet there will be questions for them about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine news. I mean, this is potentially another setback for Canada's vaccination rollout. This vaccine is approved for use in Canada. No doses administered yet, but the federal government, David looked this up this morning, the federal government has ordered up to 38 million doses of this vaccine, which is enough for every person in Canada, 38 million doses of this vaccine. And now you have 2 of these very powerful health agencies in the United States saying, let's have a pause here on this one. And that's how we start Tuesday here on the Rob Snow Show. Oh, good morning. And thank you for spending some of your day with us. We have much to discuss, much to learn. I was actually looking up this morning once more some of the vaccination data, how Canada compares, how the country's vaccination rollout is going. And that was even before this Johnson & Johnson news hit the newswires this morning. The vaccination rollout in this program, you know what? It's shown some improvement. I will say that. We are finally up to averaging 250,000 doses a day in Canada. Good news, okay? The United States, by the way, is doing 3.2 million doses a day. We've hit the 0.2. Personal best, though, right? So typically Canadian. 36% of Americans have now had 1 dose of vaccine. In this country, it's 17%. 17% of Canadians have had 1 dose of vaccine. This is all according to the Bloomberg Vaccine Tracker. 22% of Americans are fully vaccinated, meaning they've had 2 doses of a 2-dose vaccine. The same number here in Canada, not according to me, according to Bloomberg, okay? Same number here in Canada, 2.1%. It's 22% in the United States. It's 2.1% in Canada, 2.1% fully vaccinated. And you may have noticed this morning, if you're on social media, if you're on Twitter, Jake Tapper was trending in Canada this morning. Why would that be? That's because of a very critical news report that aired on CNN yesterday about the Trudeau government's handling of the vaccination rollout and the deluge of new cases and hospitalizations because of the 3rd wave. Liberals are not impressed with this. This is just a little taste of it here, just a little taste of it.
Some bad news for our neighbors north on our world lead. Canada is now outpacing the United States in terms of coronavirus cases per capita. This is a concerning uptick, considering that the Canadian vaccine rollout is not going well at all. By comparison, in the U.S., more than 1 in 3 Americans have gotten at least their first shot. In Canada, fewer than 1 in 5.
Okay, thanks, David. Not going well at all. See, when CNN pays attention to Canada at all, Canadians expect it to be something nice, flattering. And let's face it, during the Trump years, it usually was. Like, Trump bad, Trudeau good. Trump bad, Trudeau good. What more do you need to know? Trudeau could always count on some friendly coverage from, at least some of the American cable news networks. But yesterday's story on CNN, it's Jake Tapper's show, but it was Paula Newton's report, actually. She was the journalist who actually did the story. It's a damning indictment of Trudeau. Not flattering. It uses words like failure. It uses phrases like not going well at all, hard to stomach, vaccines arriving too late, our Canadian cousins deserve better. It even featured Dr. Thierry Messana, CEO, University of Ottawa Heart Institute. He was on this show less than 2 weeks ago on the Rob Snow Show, talking about his frustration with the pace of the vaccination program, particularly for staff at the University of Ottawa Heart Institute. Imagine that, from the Rob Snow Show to CNN in 2 weeks. We're going to play the full report a little bit later in the program. It was really tough on Trudeau. And why not, right? We're 4 months into the vaccination program now. 2% of Canadians have had 2 doses. The British government, had the same strategy. Let's get as many first doses into as many arms as possible, even if that means we have to extend the length between doses to make that possible. But even in the UK, at least there, 11% of the population has had 2 doses. Here, 2%. And the UK economy started reopening yesterday. People drinking beer on patios even though it's snowing outside. At least they have the option. 2% of the population has had the second dose of a 2-dose vaccine, and now the single dose J&J vaccine, the FDA and the CDC, they both say it needs to be paused. It's a serious turn of events, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not going to do anything to help whatever is happening in Ontario's hospitals, where it's situation critical. Dr. Virginia Roth is the chief of staff at the Ottawa Hospital. Will join me coming up in just a few minutes from now on where we are with acute care hospital care in this city, where procedures are being canceled again, where patient transfers are happening. Ottawa hospitals taking in patients from the Toronto area because of the situation in the hospitals in the Toronto area. 623 patients in ICU across Ontario, climbing every day. 29 in ICU in Ottawa hospitals, 96 in hospital altogether, the typical patient younger. We had an executive vice president of Ontario Health on the show yesterday, told me, Rob, our hospitals are near the breaking point. Near the breaking point. Well, it seems to get worse by the day. How long can you be at the breaking point before something actually breaks? Another big story that we'll get into this morning, the airline bailout. I am of mixed opinion on this. I'll tell you, Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, he is not of mixed opinion on this. Very firm. Not impressed with what the Canadian government has done here with Air Canada. I don't know if the government had much choice. I suppose it could have left Air Canada just, let it sit there, wither, and die. But doesn't a country the size of Canada need a national airline? I'm glad to see that the government demanded consumer refunds. It's about time there was some movement on that. I couldn't believe Air Canada had the audacity. Can you imagine this? People buy tickets for a vacation on Air Canada. They're not getting a refund. At the same time, Air Canada is trying to buy a rival airline in a takeover offer. Hey, can I get my $2,000 back? No, we're trying to buy Air Transat right now. We really need your $2,000 to do it. I thought that was just terrible. And for sure, it's the right thing to do if we're going to lend this company any money at all, that the airline restore services to the smaller regional airports. No doubt about that. But also, let's not kid ourselves what's really at play here. Jobs in Quebec, major factor. Air Canada is supposed to buy 33 Airbus A220s. That's the plane that used to be the Bombardier C-Series. How much has the taxpayer poured into that airplane? It's made in Mirabel. And as part of this bailout, Air Canada had to promise you can't cancel a single order of that airplane. I mean, it's a $6 billion aid package, thereabouts. Don't kid yourselves. It involves about $3 billion worth of airplanes made in Montreal. And we have to talk about what's going on in the schools. Massive reversal for the Ford government. Credibility taking a beating lately. Schools, I mean, last week, we're going to listen to the Premier. Schools were safe. It was irresponsible to suggest otherwise. Fear-mongering even. That was just last week. Here's the Premier.
99.89% of staff have never reported a case of COVID. Where we saw the problem, and everyone remembers this, at Christmas. When the kids go back into the community, that's where it's happening. It's not happening in the schools.
Not happening in the schools. Not happening in the schools. Then comes yesterday.
Based on consultation with Dr. Williams and our health officials last night, today we're taking further action. We're moving school online only.
Online only.
After the April break.
Online only. Online only. Who knows? Maybe he'll change his mind again. It is indefinitely, after all. Schools closed indefinitely. Indefinitely could mean your school will reopen tomorrow or a year from tomorrow. It's indefinite, right? You can offer an opinion on that during the Talkback Hour. We do that every morning between 10 and 11. 750-1310. Rob Snow Show, City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic. But we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly. But it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did. But I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us. But we thought, we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food. And we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and had the food there, you can really compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have from combos and to small sandwiches. One of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend a family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Dr. Virginia Roth is Chief of Staff at the Ottawa Hospital. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, Rob.
What is the current situation with COVID-19 at the Ottawa Hospital?
Well, we're certainly seeing our numbers of COVID patients increasing. So we had another 5 patients admitted overnight, which brings us to 63 in hospital at the moment.
63 in total?
That's correct. At the Ottawa Hospital. Throughout the city, it's well over 100 at this point.
And of those 63 at the Ottawa Hospital, how many are in intensive care? Do you know, Doctor?
Yes, we currently have 21 in our ICUs.
Is that an all-time high?
It is, unfortunately, for us, yes.
What is the capacity for ICU admissions at the Ottawa Hospital?
Well, we have, our standard capacity is, in the mid to high 50s. We also have surge plans, so we're, and pulling those out now, and we have contingencies where we can admit many more patients than our usual.
Okay. Do you have the staff? This is one of the concerns that I hear quite frequently, Dr. Roth, is it's one thing to say we have beds, but are there actually the appropriate level of staff? Can you speak to the staffing situation, particularly when it comes to COVID patients and ICU admissions?
Yeah, that is the main challenge right now. So as you mentioned, it's not a question of space. It's not a question of ventilators. It really is, do we have the staff to take care of patients? So you may have heard that hospitals across the city are starting to ramp down non-urgent services, such as surgery, for example, so that we can prepare, train, and redeploy our staff to COVID units and to the ICU.
Okay, and the skills transfer, Doctor?
We certainly...
Or does new training have to take place for somebody that you can turn into a kind of an ICU COVID staff worker?
Yeah, that's a good question. We can't create an ICU nurse overnight for sure. We have the good fortune of having some staff who have ICU experience or acute, patient care experience. But, things may have changed since they last worked in the ICU, so they need to have we're offering refreshers. They're also, we're having to be a bit more flexible across both our staff and physicians in terms of helping each other out, working more in a team environment where, for example, you might have an ICU nurse that's primarily responsible, but other nurses and physicians helping and supporting that ICU nurse. So it's a different way of doing things. Certainly things are starting to look different in our hospitals than they have in the past.
Okay, there are reports that patients are being transferred from GTA area hospitals to Ottawa. Has the Ottawa Hospital accepted any patients from the GTA, and if so, how many?
Yes, we have. So we work regionally, and as a region, we've accepted 5. 3 have arrived here so far, 1 to the Ottawa Hospital, and we're expecting 2 more in the next day or 2, by tomorrow, actually. So we're in a fortunate position in that we have ICU beds right now, and we can accept patients, and we're certainly looking at this as a provincial system and working together to make sure patients can access the care they need.
How likely is it that patients at the Ottawa hospital could eventually be transferred to a hospital in another city? Do you foresee that?
Yeah, I mean, it's happening at some level in that, as I said, we work regionally with all the hospitals in the region to make sure patients have access to the care they need. So we have transferred, I think, 26 patients in the last couple of weeks to other hospitals in the region. Not back to Greater Toronto area, of course, but so we are really working closely as a system. It's day by day, and trying to make sure patients are cared for in the most appropriate place.
Okay, you mentioned non-urgent elective procedures have been canceled. Before that decision was made at the provincial level, right? Before that decision was made, what was the backlog in those procedures for the Ottawa hospital?
So I'll first say that, we don't really cancel procedures. This is care.
Well, delayed,
so
yes, yeah.
We postpone them. It might not happen as quickly as we'd all hoped. We had started to, in fact, enact our ramp down plans before the province came out with its directive, but it's a difficult balance between, tackling a backlog, which was at about 17,000 region-wide just for surgery, so about 17,000 patients in our region waiting for surgery. We had brought that down, so we ramped up above pre-pandemic levels in our surgical volumes, but so it's difficult to put that, on hold again now. We have shown, though, that we can tackle the backlog, and as soon as we can, we'll get back at that.
Okay. So is it fewer than 17,000 then, Doctor? I hate to try to pin you down here, but I'm trying to pin you down here.
Yeah, no, it was 17,000, just above 17,000 by Thursday, and now, as you can imagine, that we're expecting that to climb.
Okay, thank you. Give me a sense of how it is going with the percentage of your patient-facing staff that have had at least one dose of vaccine, and how many have had 2 doses of vaccine?
Yeah, our vaccination rollout has been going very well at the Ottawa hospital. So we have about 90% of all our patient-facing staff that have had 1 dose of the vaccine. I would say our staff are very accepting of the vaccine, eager to get their protection. As you know, the second dose had been put on hold, so we were sort of with that delay, we were sort of stopped mid-stride. And I don't have at my fingertips, actually, the number who'd had both doses.
Okay.
But at this point, we're really going with a single dose per the provincial direction.
And it's about 90% have had at least 1 dose.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. The field hospital at the Civic campus opened January 6th. What is happening there?
It's very welcomed and being very well used. So it's pretty much full at this point. It's been very helpful to help us flex and give us some additional space. We have 25 patients in there as of today, and we are at 100% occupancy at the Civic campus.
Okay. How are your staff holding up, Doctor? More than a year into this now?
Yeah, that is, I'd say that the wellness of our staff is our top concern. You can imagine it's been a bit of a long haul. I think that we would all like to get our lives back to normal, as would our staff. And so we're doing everything we can to support our staff, realizing that we're asking, people to do things that they normally wouldn't do. That isn't part of their usual work day. So it's something we're monitoring carefully, but I would say that is a concern.
There's a survey out today from a major public opinion research firm that says an increasing number of Canadians think that this is the worst the pandemic has ever been. And a year ago, we had all kinds of news stories about people avoiding at all costs going to the hospital. Empty ERs and the whole thing. Are you seeing that again? What would be your advice to someone who may think of putting off going to an emergency room or going to see a doctor because they're afraid of COVID-19?
What we saw in the first, when the pandemic started was exactly that. And that was really unfortunate. We saw some, health outcomes that could definitely have been better had patients access care. My advice is, our hospitals are here for you. I know you're hearing that it's busy, but we have the capacity. Our teams are here. They're here to care for you if you need us. The same goes for your family physicians. And I think the key message is things could worsen, and what we don't want is people to be left with long-term impacts of avoiding access to care. So please do come to the hospital if you have an emergency or an urgent medical condition. Dr.
Roth, thank you to you and all the staff at the campuses of the Ottawa Hospital for all you're doing in this very trying time. Thank you again for your time this morning.
Okay, thanks, Rob. And if I may just say thank you to our community, because it really is, our decisions as a community around the stay-at-home order that will make the difference to our healthcare system.
Thank you again, Doctor. Bye-bye.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
And Dr. Virginia Roth is Chief of Staff at the Ottawa Hospital. Professor Ian Lee on the airline bailout after the news on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, April 13th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 10 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. It's a rare occurrence of blood clots, prompting the American authorities to recommend suspending use of the Johnson & Johnson single-shot COVID vaccine. 6 women so far have had blood clots after receiving the shots. Now, they were among 6.8 million people in the States vaccinated that way. Our country is set to begin receiving the Johnson & Johnson vaccine later on this month. An example of just how busy hospitals are during this third wave of COVID. Another 5 patients admitted overnight at the Ottawa Hospital for COVID-19. Right now, 63 COVID-19 patients as of this morning in a hospital in Ottawa, 21 of them in the ICU. Those numbers an all-time high. Prime Minister Trudeau and other federal officials will hold a briefing later this morning providing an update on the vaccine rollout. Yesterday, the Chief Public Health Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, said the number of hospitalizations is rising right across the country. More calls for the firing or resignation of Ontario's Education Minister, Stephen Lecce. NDP MPP Joel Harden says his call has nothing to do with politics. Harden tells City News if someone misleads the public or puts students at risk, they have to go. Lecce said just last week schools would remain open after March break. But yesterday, the Premier said they would be closed starting on Monday for an undetermined period of time. City News time, 9:35. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News. 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Hey, much to discuss. Bailouts and no bailouts. Professor Ian Lee is back from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Good morning. Welcome back, Professor.
Good morning, Rob.
What do you think about the airline bailout?
Well, it's overdue, and I'll explain why. I'm not a fan of bailouts. I think your listeners would know that. And I generally am not. I didn't support the GM bailout in 2009, and I wasn't being harsh. People said they saved the automobile industry. President Obama said that, and so did Harper.
Sure.
And they were flat out wrong. And empirically, factually so. Honda did not fail. Toyota did not fail. All the other automobile companies did not fail. If GM had closed down, the sales would have gone to the other automobile companies. There's 10 large, now 8, but then 10 large automobile manufacturers in the world. Let's compare and contrast that to this situation. There are essentially 2 airlines in Canada. Yes, I know about Porter, but they just don't fly all over Canada. They only fly to a few big markets. So you have 2 airlines. Some even say 1.5 because WestJet doesn't fly to all the smaller towns in the Maritimes, for example.
Right. Okay.
And we are the second largest country on the planet Earth. And as the late, great Harold Innes at the University of Toronto, he was the one who tutored and trained and developed Marshall McLuhan, said in all of his books, you cannot understand Canada. You cannot understand Canada without understanding it was built with transportation technologies. You know, the CPR, and it goes on and on. It's such an enormously gigantic country.
Yep.
And it's just not feasible when my progressive friends keep saying, you know, we're going to become like Europe and I'll be driving bicycles like in Amsterdam. Well, Europe has densities of 500 people a country, a square kilometer.
Sure.
We have density of 4. We're the smallest. We have the lowest density in the world. What am I trying to say?
We need an airline. We need an airline industry. We need an airline, right?
An airline is essential. So it was essential that they bailed it out, although I'm very critical of the way they packaged or structured the bailout.
What does not sit well with you on that front?
Well, first off, they took ownership. And I've been saying all my adult life, the role of government, and it's a very important role, is to be the referee of the hockey game. They're the guys that wear the black stripes, like on the football game or the hockey game. And I'm not trivializing this. They regulate airline safety. They regulate universities. They regulate healthcare. They regulate food. That's their job. They're the regulator. They're the cop. They're the policeman. They're the referee. And the referee can't be playing on one of the teams that they're refereeing. It's called a conflict of interest.
Okay.
That's why Air Canada was sold. People said it was some right-wing agenda. No, you cannot own what you're regulating, because it was well known that the regulators basically cheated when the government used to own Air Canada, and they would make rulings that preferred and benefited Air Canada over the private airlines because it was owned by the government. That's called an unethical conflict of interest. So they should get the hell out. They don't belong.
Yeah, but if you're gonna hand over, you know, whether you call them loans or whatever, say $6 billion, upwards of $6 billion in relief funds, should you not get, say, a piece of the action back?
I can answer that very simply. I used to work for a bank.
Yeah.
Does the banks in Canada, they're very large and very successful, I understand.
Yeah, sure.
Do they take an ownership position in every company they lend to? What a pile of nonsense. It is just specious nonsense that the finance minister is saying, we've got to do this, to ensure control. No, you don't. You have loan agreements. The banks have been doing this for hundreds of years. Maybe Ms. Freeland should talk to the banks and say, how do you lend money to companies without owning them or taking an ownership position? In fact, the government, successive Canadian Liberal governments, put in the Bank Act, it's in the Bank Act. You cannot own the companies you lend to. Does everybody know that out there? Banks are prohibited from owning companies outside of banking. They cannot buy grocery stores or take a share or in any other industry in Canada because the government completely understood, successive parliamentarians over 150 years in our country, that you are in a conflict of interest.
So the Bank of Montreal could not become a minority shareholder in Loblaws, for
Absolutely prohibited under the Bank Act.
Okay, all right.
Prohibited.
All right.
You can buy another financial institution. They're allowed to buy insurance companies because they're in the same industry.
Yeah.
But they cannot buy a manufacturing company. They cannot buy an airline. And they can't even have minority interests in them. We're not talking the pension plan because that's at arm's length and regulated by the pension authorities. And so the government should follow its own excellent advice of past Liberal governments. Lenders should not be owning companies or having shares in companies they're lending to because it compromises their objectivity in making the loan decision.
Okay, what do you think about the government has said, it's I said in my opening, right, it's $6 billion in relief, but it also involves $3 billion worth of aircraft that happen to be manufactured at Mirabel, just north of Montreal, right? So what do you think? Yes, we will come to your rescue, probably a year too late, but should have done this a year ago. But you have to make sure you buy those 33 Airbus/Bombardier airplanes. What do you think about that?
That to me is the biggest signal, clue, that this is a political gambit, a political maneuver.
Right.
Political strategy, whatever word we want to use,
sure.
in ramping up for the expected imminent election. And it's an election ploy to ensure that their base in Quebec is looked after. Let's be very clear. Those jobs are in Quebec. And I will also go further. We didn't talk yet. The requirement to fly and restore the routes. Everybody get this now? The government's told us all to stay home. The government closed the border. Government told us, please don't fly. Now they're telling Air Canada to restore the routes on which there will presumably be no customers. This shows the vacuousness of the policy of the Government of Canada. You're saying, we're going to give you money, but only if you spend it to fly your planes empty, and we want them empty because we've told everybody to stay home. And don't cross the border because we've closed it. In other words, it's a complete contradiction. So then why are they doing something so foolish? Because voters in those small towns where the routes were canceled are up in arms down the maritime bubble.
Oh, yeah, for sure. As well they should be. They
shouldn't be.
Yeah,
Rob.
they should be. Yeah, they should be.
Don't come down here, you bad people in Ontario. We don't want your COVID diseases from Ontario. Hey, and guess what? We stopped going. Now I think it's dawning on them that the Atlantic bubble was a dumb idea.
Wow.
Because they're heavily dependent on tourism. Yeah. And so guess what? We're not going there. And then they started to realize, well, the government can bail out these maritime governments, the provincial governments down there, to a degree.
Well, I don't know.
But they can't replace all lost income. And now they're realizing, whoops, we need some customers. We need some tourists.
Well, I don't know. I just had the chief of staff at the Ottawa hospital on my show who has 63 patients with COVID in the Ottawa hospital. There are none anywhere in any hospital in Nova Scotia with COVID-19.
Well, then
zero COVID patients.
Then, Rob, all the more reason why we shouldn't be restoring those routes and bringing in bad people like me that might have COVID, introducing it to the Maritimes. We should be celebrating. The Maritimes should be celebrating that there's no routes going into the Maritimes and keeping all those bad people out from Central Canada that might be bringing COVID in. Isn't that right? Why would you want to now subsidize the airlines to bring in terrible people like me into the Maritimes that might be carrying COVID?
You know what? I'm going to revoke your whatever passport we should be issuing to let you onto Cape Breton Island. I can tell you it's revoked right now.
I love
You're never going to be able to cross the causeway again with that attitude. All right. What another? You must love this. A cap on executive compensation. Nobody at the airline can make more than $1 million.
I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought you would.
And I do not consult to any airline. I don't have any shares in any airline. It's ridiculous because we don't believe in wage and price controls. Trudeau, the father, did it. You know, the land is strong. That was 1974. It was an utter disaster. Yeah. Wage controls everywhere a disaster because you're not controlling. It's the long old dilemma of central planning and supply management. If you control one price, you've got to control all the prices, because the inputs from some industries are the outputs of some industries are the inputs of other industries. And Air Canada has to compete with other industries for human capital. So if your salary is constrained and you're a top-notch executive because the government of Canada is micromanaging the airline, what do?
Yeah, you go work for Delta or United or KLM or whatever.
You go to KLM, you say, bye-bye, Canada. You know, what we're doing, the government in its infinite foolishness and its commitment to central planning is encouraging brain drain. Send our best executives away because you can make a lot more money somewhere else and the government won't be micromanaging you. That's what that's what the message is.
So look, there's a lot of loans, and this was what the finance minister said yesterday. Chrystia Freeland said, we expect to be paid back. Let's listen to this clip here, okay?
Taxpayers aren't footing the bill. This is a loan facility, and the government of Canada fully expects to be paid back.
You think we're going to get paid back in full with interest?
Before I answer that question, I had a deja vu moment. I remember the provincial, I think it was McGuinty, and Mr. Harper. We promise you, they look solemnly into the cameras, every penny of this money to General Motors will be repaid back. We promise you. And of course it wasn't. When a politician says we absolutely guarantee something's going to happen, then assume the opposite.
Okay, all right. When we come back, Air Canada gets a bailout. Laurentian University certainly did not. And I want to talk about that news in the business of higher education when we come back with Professor Ian Lee, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. When we come back, this is City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned. We have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And the people, and for us, we have to be careful, you know, especially with the virus going on. Like, did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, you know, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You know, you can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's gonna be like this. You know, earthquake might happen, we joke about it before, things might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive, that's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in a mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors, or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy, because we have to shut down completely, you know. And this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online. Let's say T-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit, but when come to clothing. Like it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could I mean, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really want to shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You want to be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, you know? You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, you know, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at a certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
Of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
We're back with Professor Ian Lee, Associate Professor of Management, Carleton University, Sprott School of Business. Laurentian University fired dozens of professors, slashed its program offerings in an unprecedented round of cuts yesterday because this university in Sudbury is bankrupt. It went bust. It's insolvent. So they're eliminating 58 undergraduate programs, 11 graduate programs. That's a third of its course offerings, and estimates about the number of professors laid off, let go. I heard just through social media, some of them without severance had been there 10 years, no severance. 80 to 100 people per professor. It's still, I know we've talked about this before, it still shocks me that a public university in Ontario has gone bankrupt. What's your take today on this news here?
I'm not shocked. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. Since 2010, I have been very vocally, both within to colleagues, across the university, outside the other universities, in the media, I have been vocally and loudly predicting that layoffs are coming down the road. I did not predict Laurentian. I'm not trying to claim clairvoyance. I said that the aging of the population, which is going to drive healthcare costs through the roof, which is a provincial responsibility along with education, is going to cause increasingly, I argued for the last 10 or 15 years, and I continue to argue more strongly today, will cause, it doesn't matter what political party, who's in power, it doesn't matter. They're going to put more and more money into healthcare, understandably so. I'm not condemning this, because there's more and more older people, and older people, guess what? They need a lot more healthcare than young people. And I've got the data from StatsCan. Older people above 65 consume vastly greater dollars per person per year. And 75-year-olds consume way more than 65-year-olds. And 85-year-olds are consuming about $25,000 per person per year. And I'm not condemning them. I'm not criticizing them. I'm saying healthcare is, as Jeffrey Simpson called it, the elephant, the monster in the room. And it's eating everything up. And we're going to hit, I believe Ontario is going to hit a wall, a fiscal wall, in the next 3 to 5 years, where the bond markets say, I'm sorry, you're just too indebted. And then there's going to be, like we saw in 1995 federally, we're going to see massive downsizing and cutting involved. And they will say to the universities, 21 or 23 universities in Ontario, we're cutting your transfer, let's 10, 20%. And for those who don't know, the government of Ontario subsidizes every university in Ontario with a BIU, basic income unit. And crudely, round numbers, it's about $10,000 per person, per student, full-time student. In addition, the universities collect and keep the tuition fees. They don't go to Ontario. So we're getting very roughly in the plus $20,000 per student.
Okay. Yeah.
So where I'm going with this story is we can compute, and can't say can, we do, and I'm not privy to inside information. I'm not speaking on behalf of Carleton. I just know that every university knows their break-even costs. Now, this even language might be offensive to some people. Too bad. Just too bad, so sad. You can compute the cost of the professor because the salary is known to the university. They're paying him or her. You know your revenue stream per student, and then you know how many bums on chairs are in each classroom. And I'm going to suggest to you, and I don't have inside information, I do not have secret information, but it seems to me from what I've picked up anecdotally and around over the years, the break even for an undergraduate course is somewhere around 20 students in the classroom. And I use that number because that's the number President Van Loon used 1995 when he did the downsizing to get us out of our fiscal crisis, and they cut all programs, any course, they canceled any course with an enrollment less than 20. Now let's go back to Laurentian.
Yeah.
About two-thirds of their 80% of their students were taking 20% of the courses, which meant that you had very small numbers taking 80% of the courses. What does that mean in plain English? Very small class sizes. 5 students, 7 students.
6,000 student enrollment was 6,000. I mean, it's...
Right. So what I'm saying, and I hope there's some professors listening to this program, for forever and ever in the university, it was a badge of honor. Hey, I've only got a small class. Ha ha. You know, it was sort of it was something to be aspire to.
Sure.
To teach a small class of only 5 or 7 or 10 students.
Right.
I am saying to students, if there's any professors listening, that's the kiss of death. That's omerta. If you are teaching a class of less than 20, you should be going to your dean and saying, I want to make my class bigger. I'd like to consolidate this with another class. If you want to proof yourself against the day that cuts are coming, when the Ontario government hits the wall, which I predict they will in the next 3 to 5 years, and I predict they're going to cut the subsidies given to universities across Ontario, and then they'll just say to the dean, to the universities, how you look after the cut we've given you, that's up to you. You can do whatever you want, but they will be cutting. So where do you cut? They can't cut on ideology and say, well, you know, you're left-wing or you're right-wing, so we're going to keep you or get rid of you.
Well, they cut people on the sunshine list like you.
They will cut.
You're the professors. You're making all the money. So.
Yes and no. I'll tell you, I think what they will do, and we saw it.
I mean, is there a professor in Ontario that's not making $100,000 a year? Come on.
That's my point. So that doesn't separate anybody, right? What I'm suggesting to you is that the bigger the course, the more likely you will not be cut, because why would you cut the courses that are popular, generating lots of revenues?
Right.
Every student in that class is a revenue stream to the university. Yeah. If you're teaching a class like 55 students like I am, okay, well, why would you cut a course of 55 students when you've got courses that literally have 2 or 4 or 6 or 7 students that are losing money on every last course?
So, look, we only have 90 seconds here, but, this is hardly, the only, say, smaller regional university in Ontario or in Canada, for that matter. Do you think... I mean, is Laurentian a tip of the iceberg, so to speak, a sign of things to come? Or could there be more failings of universities like this? Or?
Now, the second risk, and I'm not suggesting...
We only have a minute left.
I don't believe the big universities are at risk. I don't believe Carleton or University of Ottawa or York or U of T or Queen's, not at all. Programs, small enrollment programs in those universities will be at risk. Okay. But if you're talking the university as opposed to the program or the course, these small niche universities, and if you go to universities, Canada.ca, anybody listening, and look at all the universities in Canada, they have the enrollment, and there's all kinds of universities in this country with 1,000 and 2,000 students. That's just ridiculous. It's a high school, and it's called a university. So small regional universities should be working behind the scenes night and day to merge with a bigger university so they can scale up. Bigger university, the bigger you are, the more likely that you are going to be
could you take Laurentian and make it the northern campus of the University of Toronto or something?
If I was Laurentian's president, I would be talking, burning up the phone lines to Thunder Bay, Lakehead, to Nipissing, and every other organization in the northern part of Ontario, northern Ontario, that calls itself a university, and saying, let's make one big honkin' University of Northern Ontario.
University of Northern Ontario. Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Scale up.
Okay. Got to run. Very interesting. Thank you, Professor. Always insightful.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye. Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton, the Talkback Hour. Was it the right thing to do? Doug Ford closed the schools just a few days after he said schools were safe and they wouldn't be closed. Was that the right decision? 750-1310 after the news on City News.
local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, April 13th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 10 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. U.S. health authorities calling for an immediate pause for the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
It's one of the 4 shots on Canada's approval list, but we haven't received any doses yet. They're expected to start arriving at the end of the month. 10 million doses pre-ordered with the option for 28 million more. But will the advice on the Johnson & Johnson shot change in this country as the U.S. temporarily stops using it over blood clot concerns? Happening in a half dozen women between the ages of 18 to 48 years old within 2 weeks of vaccination. But it's out of almost 7 million people who have had the shot in the U.S. Dr. Carlos Del Rio is with the Emory University School of Medicine.
When you think about a 1 in a million event, you cross the street every day, you have a much higher chance of getting run over by a car.
Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca are both viral vector vaccines, so experts say it's not surprising to be seeing the same issues in both, while Pfizer and Moderna are mRNA vaccines. I'm Jamie Pulfer.
City News Time, 10:02. More patients admitted into the ICU with COVID-19 at Ottawa Hospital last night, setting a new record with 21. Chief of Staff Dr. Virginia Roth breaks down the citywide numbers for COVID patients.
Well, we're certainly seeing our numbers of COVID patients increasing. So we had another 5 patients admitted overnight, which brings us to 63 in hospital at the moment. Throughout the city, it's well over 100 at this point.
Now, Roth adds that there is still a capacity for ICU beds, but they are working on training additional nurses now for those duties. She tells City News they have had over 17,000 non-urgent elective surgeries that have been delayed. That number is only expected to climb. A local MPP is urging the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, to resign over the handling of the school situation through the pandemic, joining multiple other voices from Queen's Park in that call.
Ottawa Centre MPP Joel Harden feels the move to close schools after Minister Lecce said they would be open following the break shows the Ontario government is not taking the virus seriously and they care more about press conferences. Harden feels Lecce is being dishonest with the public over safety by only talking about specific schools or omitting key information. He tells me this is beyond just a party issue.
We deserve an education minister. I don't care about left or right or what political party someone's from. If you mislead the public, if you put our kids in danger and staff in danger, you've got to go.
Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca is also calling on Lecce to be removed as Minister of Education and suggests the Ford government adopt the Liberal plan to implement extra safety measures. Alex Gouge, City News.
Well, we're just getting the new COVID numbers for the day coming in now. We'll have more on that in a moment. First, your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Temperatures well above average for us again today. Slight chance of some showers, some sunny breaks, and the high 18 degrees. Tonight, mainly cloudy and 7, and tomorrow some showers, otherwise mainly cloudy and 18. That's the high for today, 18.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 10 degrees. Just getting the new numbers in for the daily COVID count in our province. 3,670 new cases today in Ontario. Of that number, 214 of them are in Ottawa. 22 are in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 19 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 15 in Renfrew County District Health Unit. Correction on the Eastern Ontario number we've given. It's not 22, it's actually 32. We'll have more throughout the day on City News. And Egyptian authorities have impounded a massive cargo vessel that blocked the Suez Canal last month. There's a financial dispute going on. The Suez Canal head said they will not allow the Ever Given to leave the country until a compensation amount is settled on with the Japanese owner. It's going to be at least $900 million. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, Rob Snow Show continues.
Yeah, I'd like your take on the decision to close schools. Kind of came out of nowhere yesterday. I was not expecting to hear that, especially after last week's defense of keeping them open after the March, now April break. I mean, it's difficult to know on any given day if the Ford government knows whether it's coming or going. I mean, I hate to be tough on you guys. Actually, no, I don't. I'm tough on everyone. Tough but fair, okay? Tough but fair. Always opinionated. Sometimes, and look, I say this with the most sympathy I can muster at this point in time, 13 months into this. It seems like government is just making it up as it goes along. And it's not just on schools. I mean, think about, lockdowns and shutdowns and stay-at-home orders and states of emergency. 1 week, we can loosen restrictions, okay? Open the patios. Even though everyone around you with a medical degree is saying, do you really think that's wise right now? Oh, sure, don't worry. Everything's under control. 1 week later, hey, we're closing things down. We're declaring a brand new state of emergency. And a new stay-at-home order, and it's province-wide. Whether you have 900 cases or 0, province-wide stay-at-home. And businesses that just reopened, you have to close down again. Again and again and again. Rinse and repeat. Just one example, right? But a glaring one nonetheless. And then, not to be outdone, along comes the whole situation with the schools. We're going to play some audio here, just to highlight it, okay? The Ford government, the premier, the education minister, for weeks, if not months, they have been insisting your schools are safe. Ontario schools are safe. 99% of schools are safe. It's the ivory soap of schools, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, 99, 44, 100s. Schools. Safe. Schools. Safe. Schools. Safe. Schools. Safe. Let's listen to the premier.
Schools are safe. Folks, across the province, we're looking at 98.5%, almost 99% of the schools are currently open. 99.88% of students do not have active cases. 99.32% of students have never reported a case of COVID. 99.83% of staff do not have an active case.
We are the Wayne Gretzky of schools, right?
Of staff have never reported a case of COVID.
How long ago was that?
Where we saw the problem, and everyone remembers this, at Christmas.
Okay. How long ago was that? 5 days ago? 6 days ago? Something like that? Not long ago. Schools are safe.
That was 1 week ago. 1 week ago today. April 6th,
1 week ago today.
Last Tuesday.
1 week ago today. 1 week ago today. Schools are safe. Schools are safe. Schools are safe. The education minister. Schools are safe. Schools
I'm
are
very
safe.
pleased that in this province, of the schools that are open within the public health units that are open in the province today, 98.3% of our schools are open. 99.8% of students do not have an active case of COVID. 99.7% of staff do not have an active case of COVID. We know from the Chief Medical Officer of Health, who was confirmed as recently as yesterday, that schools in this province have demonstrated an incredible level of resilience, have worked very well in keeping COVID out of them and keeping our students safe.
Okay, so that was Mr. Lecce, Stephen Lecce, Education Minister, Province of Ontario, rising star in the Ford government. Schools are safe, right? Schools are safe. 1 week ago today, schools are safe. Until, they're not. They're not. They're not. All of them will be shut down indefinitely. Despite what we insisted repeatedly just 1 week ago. We're going to shut them down, shut them down, shut them down. Friends and folks, I hate to break it to you, schools are closed.
My friends, no one wants our kids in school more than I do. That's where they belong. But with COVID spreading like wildfire, with these deadly variants taking hold in Ontario, we simply can't be too cautious right now. We have to be proactive. And when it comes to keeping our kids safe, I will never take unnecessary risk. That's why, based on consultation with Dr. Williams and our health officials last night, today we're taking further action.
Today.
We're moving school online only after the April break.
Right. Keep them closed indefinitely. No, your child won't be going back to school after spring break is over. Just ignore everything we said last week, okay? Rip it all up. Throw it in the shredder. Toss it in the fireplace if you have a fireplace. None of it is applicable now. Mr. Lecce, last week, schools are safe. Schools are safe. Death traps this week, death traps.
Now, despite these efforts, we recognize the threat posed by rising numbers of COVID-19 cases, increasing hospitalization, and the pressure our healthcare system is experiencing as a result. This worrying trend will leave us in an impossible situation if we do not act immediately.
Impossible.
And that is why, in consultation with the Chief Medical Officer of Health, we have made the decision to move elementary and secondary students across the province to remote learning following the April break.
In other words, we don't know when your child is going to be back in the classroom. We don't know when the school staff will be immunized, which is another great mystery as well. I mean, seriously, this is what is passing as pandemic response in Ontario right now. And now you know why I did an interview with an expert on how to effectively and clearly communicate in a time of crisis. Did that just yesterday. Okay. You know why I did that interview? Because of that. Okay. 1 week safe, next week not safe. Has it really changed all that much in 7 days? Seriously? What could have possibly changed so much in 7 days that the government has been forced to do this incredible flip-flop? Either the schools were safe last week and they're still safe, and the government is caving in and bowing to union pressure, or the schools were not safe last week, and the government chose to ignore it, to ignore the danger. What is it? What is it? Either way, both of those scenarios are not a good look for Premier Ford, who, I hate to say it, increasingly looks like a premier caught in the headlights. A premier without a plan. A premier looking to ride it out, wait it out, and hope the vaccines will eventually ride to the rescue. This decision about keeping schools closed, it is a big deal. Can you imagine the stress that this is creating now when people have had nothing but 13 months of stress when it comes to trying to take care of their kids, take care of their jobs, and take care of their homes? For so many parents, the whole day, the whole routine of daily life revolves around school. Getting children ready for school, getting children to school, getting children home from school, arranging childcare because of school. It's all about that place. School. Last week, millions of parents had enough to worry about, but at least they were told your school is safe. But now, school is closed. And it's closed everywhere. And it's closed indefinitely. Is that the right decision to do? Has Premier Ford made the right decision? Closing schools indefinitely? Moving to online learning indefinitely? Your opinion. It matters. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making, I knew this is a skill I had, so I made chocolate that had culture, a cultural based with a teaching, because culture here is not just the little part, it's the large part, it's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair. And then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs. And Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing, it's just kind of taken off. And it's great because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff, and it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano, and it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner being around town, and we decided to partner because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way. And there's, and they're very, one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together, and it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Purat, the head of Wabano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Parents once more left to scramble, left to arrange childcare, if that's even possible now. Forced to forego work hours, if that's even possible. They haven't already sacrificed their own careers because of the uncertainty in the public education system. And if you think about public education in Ontario, it wasn't very stable before the pandemic. All kinds of labor disputes because of the never-ending demand from the teachers' unions, right? And children, here we go again, once more, paying the greatest price, missing out on everything that comes with going to school. Beyond being educated, the socialization and the structure of a day, and friendship. It's all in a state of suspension now. Schools are safe. Schools are safe. Schools are safe. No, wait, they're not. They're closed indefinitely. This is where we are now in Ontario. If you're a parent, how are you supposed to plan? How are you supposed to plan for the foreseeable future now that schools are closed? What's the time frame? Oh, indefinitely. Indefinitely. When can we expect you back to work, Ms. Smith? Well, actually, indefinitely. I'll be away indefinitely. I have to take care of my children. The schools are closed. Yeah. It's a big problem, ladies and gentlemen. It is a huge problem that this has happened. James, downtown James.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah,
Thank you for your show.
Thank you.
Definitely the wrong decision, particularly at the overall provincial level. It was the wrong decision.
Okay.
Would it be even the wrong decision at this Ottawa City level? I mean, the pediatric hospitals, all of them in Ontario, wrote, I believe it was on Thursday, saying do not close the schools.
That's right. Yep.
And totally ignored. There's 0 cases of COVID at CHEO. There hasn't been for, I believe, weeks or months. But they're canceling surgeries for another reason. They're canceling surgeries because of the mental health crisis. They have so many kids who are coming in with suicide attempts and eating disorders, etc. And if you talk to a CHEO pediatrician, and I have, they say that there's a direct correlation between shutdowns and mental health decline. So we are going, depending on how long the shutdown is, I'm sorry to say, but we are going to see more suicide attempts and more suicides of teens in Ottawa, because they get bullied day after day after day online and they're not going to school the next day to maybe resolve it with that person. If they're looking face to face, maybe something can be resolved, right? And they spiral downwards, and I'm sorry to say, some kids are going to die. I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I believe it's true. Also, ICU nurses and ICU doctors, they're parents too. They need to take care of their kids.
Yeah.
They may be able to do a full 40 hours, but those nurses and doctors aren't working 40 hours a week right now. They're working a lot of overtime, and they're going to have to cut back their hours. So how are the adult hospitals going to staff with this shortage of essential staff that's going to become because of school shortage? And schools I'm not saying that they're daycares. They are an important place for kids to go learn. So I think it was the wrong decision. I hope that even last week I kind of laughed and I was kind of angry when you had the ETFO President Hammond on, and you played the recording from Vera.
Yeah, and he said, well, I disagree with her.
Yeah, what do you mean? What do you disagree with? She just presented a bunch of scientific facts that the studies showed that they weren't catching it at school, even with the variant. The teachers and the students were catching it before and after school. And instead of refuting it with scientific facts, it's like we disagree. So I thought it was sad, and that was the level of debate that was at. So, anyways, wrong decision. I hope it gets overturned as soon as possible. But that's my 2 points.
Okay, thank you, James. Thank you. Yep. Good call, James. As always, Khalid. What do you think, Khalid? Here, schools closed indefinitely.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for taking my call. Well, listen, I got 2 small kids, one in grade 1 and one in kindergarten.
Yep.
And it's a joke because they should have just canceled March break, and that way they could have had school. Because what they're concerned about is, we're going to have March break and the kids are going to come back with all these cooties or whatever.
Yep.
But they could have just canceled March break 1 week, and they could have had all the kids in school, right?
Yep.
Because let me tell you, Rob, as someone who had to sit down with a 5-year-old and a 6-year-old online learning, it's an absolute gong show. It makes no sense.
Right. Okay.
Like if they want to sit in front of a screen, they want to watch Dora the Explorer. They don't want to watch. They can't.
Right.
They don't have that attention span to do online learning.
Their fear is community spread. This is Randall Denley's point in Post Media, in the Citizen and the Post today. He says, well, if you're really worried about community spread, why are you having the children spend more time in the community instead of in a classroom?
Exactly.
Where there are preventive measures being taken, to...
Exactly. And there's another point to make on that.
Yeah.
So schools are closed, but daycares are open. You know how I know that? My wife has a home daycare. So guess what? My house is still bumping,
Right.
So daycares are open, but schools are closed. It makes no sense. Makes no sense. Honestly, it's like they didn't no foresight into this at all.
Okay.
That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Rob.
Well, it's, how much foresight is being made into any of these decisions? That's what I'm starting to wonder, because, gosh, you can get a serious case of whiplash trying to follow some of the decision-making that's coming out of Toronto these days. Cameron. Good morning, Cameron. You're on City News.
Rob, how are you doing,
I'm okay, sir. What do you think about the closure of schools indefinitely, in-class learning for online learning?
Well, I tell you, these teachers, if they really want to get support, I think they shot themselves in the foot. I think that the support for teachers and the sympathy for the teachers has gone the way of the dodo. 1 week, the doc says it's all good, kids are safer in school. Next week, it's not. It seems such a seesaw type of governing. Then they wonder why no one follows the rules anymore. It's because they just can't seem to figure it out.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, my daughter's teacher had the mistake of giving me attitude at school, and I told her, I said, look, the hard-done-by teachers of Ontario, please tell me how life is difficult. You guys are surfing your way through this, working from home, doing arts and crafts. I could probably teach more to my daughter at home than you actually are.
Right. Okay.
What a joke. And then they're going to come and complain to parents that their life is difficult while the parents are stuck at home having to be a full-time employee and now a full-time teacher's assistant too, just to make sure that your kid is sitting on a computer all day. It's very unnatural. They want to be at school with kids.
Of course.
But now I'm telling you, the support for this government, and I'm a conservative, I'm telling you, I'm done. I am so done with Ford and O'Toole's week. I think the whole thing is a big Mickey Mouse operation, and I think the teachers are shooting their credibility and all support for them.
Well, I'm not, you're very tough on teachers today, Cameron, and usually people who know me, I'm usually right there with you when it comes to, as you say, the poor hard done by Ontario teacher. But this is not a decision made by the teachers or even their unions. This is a decision made by the Ford government. Decision that completely reverses a previous decision made 1 week ago today when they were insisting schools were safe and go and enjoy your April break, and we'll see you back in class at the end of the break. And here we are, a week later, and school is closed indefinitely. It's a big issue. Lori, Ottawa, you're on City News. Go ahead, Lori.
Oh, hi, Rob. What I don't understand with this whole government issue, well, it's not even a government issue. It's just, they're a bunch of losers that are waste of skin. First they're saying, yes, schools are safe. Now they're saying, no, schools are closed. Well, Ford just answered his own question by saying it was due to the deadly variants. Why don't they come up with some sort of a vaccine?
But were there no deadly variants a week ago in Ontario?
Oh, no, never. And
when we were having, maybe we weren't having 4,000 cases. We were certainly having 3,000 cases a week ago, right?
Exactly. It makes no sense.
And, we didn't have 600 people in ICU. We only had 500.
Well, that's right. So it's only 100. It doesn't make that much of a difference. But still, come up with a vaccine for the variants. Do something other than, complain about this and that and the other thing. It's totally ridiculous.
Okay.
This whole thing is ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Okay, thank you, Lori. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's probably a very accurate description. Ridiculous. Halftime, Rob Snow Show, Talkback Hour. This is City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, April 13th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's 10. And here's what's making news this hour. Latest number for the province in COVID cases show a positive move, below 4,000, but still 3,670 new cases today. Of that number, 214 are in Ottawa, 32 in Eastern Ontario. There are 19 more cases in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 15 new cases in Renfrew. The province also says 15 more people have died from COVID-19. 2 vaccines approved for use in our country that are the same type now both have issues with blood clots. A very, very small percentage of people getting the AstraZeneca, now apparently the Johnson & Johnson in the United States, have had blood clots. In fact, it's 6 people out of almost 7 million doses of that vaccine, the J&J, given in the States, resulted in blood clot issues. The Americans are recommending holding off on more doses delivered. Canada is set to begin receiving these doses from Johnson & Johnson in the next couple of weeks. Nothing to do with politics, but safety. NDP MPP Joel Harden says it's time to fire the education minister in Ontario. Earlier this week, Stephen Lecce said schools would remain open. Now, the decision has been made to close them after spring break. Harden says if a minister misleads the public or puts students or staff in danger, they have to go. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Doug Ford's closing the schools. Let's play the 2 shorter clips now. And compare and contrast, shall we? Compare and contrast. Last week, schools are safe, according to the Premier.
99.89% of staff have never reported a case of COVID. Where we saw the problem, and everyone remembers this, at Christmas. When the kids go back into the community, that's where it's happening. It's not happening in the schools.
That was last week. This is yesterday.
Based on consultation with Dr. Williams and our health officials last night, today we're taking further action. We're moving school online only after the April break.
And this is today. Queen's Park in the question period just underway. This is the Education Minister.
To prevent a challenge in our schools. In the words of the Chief Medical Officer of Health, he said yesterday, schools have been safe. This intervention is designed to keep them safe, to get them back open. And our collective resolve is to make sure that Ontarians follow the rules, that we keep strong protocols in place, reduce the transmission in the community to get Ontario schools back open.
The final supplementary.
Well, Speaker, you know, this government's lack of action has led to uncertainty, has led to stress, it's led to anxiety. This is anxiety and stress and uncertainty for parents and for kids and for teachers and education workers, because this government didn't want to listen to the experts and refused to spend the money to keep our schools safe. And now the warnings are upon us that in fact childcare might be next in terms of closing. Why is it that this government refuses to listen to the expert advice? When will they actually do the right thing? Fix this mess, reverse the cuts to education, and invest in our schools, our kids, and our education workers.
And the Minister of Education.
Mr. Speaker, we have followed the advice of the medical experts. In the words of the CEO of the Hospital for Sick Children yesterday, and I quote, "I don't think we can open schools right now. We have to just now do our part and not fail our children and do everything we can to drive down community transmission so that schools can be the first doors to open." We certainly agree, which is why we've taken action in this province with the stay-at-home order, with a variety of actions designed to reduce transmission in the community. This issue rests exclusively with rising transmission in the province, as well as our ICU capacity really at a breaking point. And that's why this decision was made, pivoting quickly to remote learning, where this government has invested. We've also ensured the continuity of mental health access for these kids, recognizing that they should be in a class. Our commitment on this side of the House is to work every day with the Chief Medical Officer of Health to do everything we can to reduce transmission, to protect our healthcare heroes, and to get kids back in class.
That's Stephen Lecce.
Question, once again, the Leader of the Opposition.
Responding, such as it goes in question period these days, to a question from the Leader of the Opposition, the Leader of the New Democrats, Andrea Horwath. Schools are closed indefinitely, online learning only, in a major policy reversal from Premier Doug Ford. Gathering your reaction here on the Talk Back Hour on City News at 750-1310. Diane, good morning. You're on City News.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi.
So we just heard the NDP, and we hear the unions that want the schools closed. They've always been saying there's not enough ventilation in the schools. So now they have ventilation in the schools. In fact, one of my granddaughters in grade 8, they've had windows open since February, March, when they got back to school.
Wow.
They have been outside for phys ed for the last 2 weeks. They had, so what else do I want to say here? You mean you've closed all the schools in Timmins, Hornpain, all in the north, because people are going to travel up to Timmins and take the COVID up there? I see why in Southern Ontario we have to close things because people travel.
More than 1,000 cases in Toronto today, too. One out of every 3 cases pretty much is in Toronto, right? So
I think everybody that's 65 and older, we could volunteer to babysit for some of these parents that need to get back to work.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. Thank you for your call this morning. 750-1310 on closing schools indefinitely. John, good morning, John. You're on City News.
Good morning.
Morning, John. Go ahead, sir.
I'm just wondering if you happen to know that what the studies show is has been the safest profession so far since COVID started.
The safest profession. I don't know what the safest profession is, but
the least likely to get COVID.
Yeah, what is it? Is it a teacher or
K-8 teachers?
Right. Okay.
Okay, they never should have closed the schools.
Okay. I haven't seen a story to that effect. I haven't seen data to that effect, but I guess I'll take your word for it.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yep. Never should have closed. Is that it, John? Okay, all right.
No.
Kind of a bad connection there, John. Bit of a delay. Okay, all right. Jay is on the line here in Carp. Go ahead, Jay. Good morning.
Hi, just responding. I watch your show most mornings if I can.
Okay, thank you.
During my breaks and whatnot. But,
yep.
I work in education.
Okay.
And I'm not here to back us up or anything like that. But, but one thing. Sorry, you still there?
Yeah, I'm right here, Jay.
Sorry. Sorry.
Yep.
My car, I shut my car off if I had the Bluetooth.
Okay, got to turn your radio off there, Jay. Okay, yeah.
Is that yes? Like I think that the schools were fairly safe compared to say hospitals and other areas, right? But I think a lot of people forget that I think it was like 1 in 4 now we're being told schools have COVID walking around in the school, and those are just the cases that are being found. Like I mean, we're not really equipped to deal with the fact that we don't have any idea whether the schools are safe. We don't really know. In terms of like a per capita, I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. But to me, nobody's sure. And I just don't think it's fair to sit there and bash and I guess point fingers at the education workers. It's an ongoing thing. It's like a year after year, decade after decade. My parents are both.
Yeah, I hear this figure. I hear this figure. Excuse me, Jay. Excuse me. Just hold on, Jay. Hold on, buddy. Hold on.
And I'm like 15 years old, 16 years old, and I'm being told that by my parents. Another thing that I think is important for a lot of people to realize that if this was so important, then how come we weren't treated, I guess, as frontline workers? Like, why don't we already have our vaccines? If we're so important.
Well, why do you think you don't have vaccines, Jay? Jay,
how come I guess we don't?
Jay, you got to listen to me. Jay, you got to listen to me. Okay?
Yeah, anyway, that's my opinion. And finally, again, I'll go back to what the unions were doing. Unions have been quite quiet, in my opinion. Like,
are you kidding me? Jay, Jay, they're running radio attack ads right now against Doug Ford's government, for crying out loud.
But what's the difference between the Doug Ford government doing it against the teachers whenever they could have? Did you realize in his platform, he actually had, he had a line across the education area. A line. There was actually nothing even...
Oh, you mean we were going to spend zero on public education, Jay? This government, this government has now presented three budgets. Jay, okay, Jay, if you're not going to... I'm done you talking over me. It's not the Jay and Carp show. All right? This government has presented three budgets. And every single one of them has been a record spending budget. No government in the history of Ontario has spent more money, and that includes on public education, than this government. Ottawa Public Health, in Ottawa here, Ottawa Public Health reports this morning 19 ongoing outbreaks in what it calls childcare and school settings, and 3 in the last 24 hours. An outbreak is one case, Jay. One case. 19? How many schools are in the Ottawa Carleton District School Board? How many in the English Catholic Board? And then let's take the French boards. We have 19 outbreaks. Is that 1 in 4 schools, Jay? Is that 1 in 4 schools? And look, I'm with you. We should be vaccinating teachers. We should be considering teachers frontline healthcare workers. I've said that all along. Why isn't that happening? It's the same reason Canadians are waiting 4 months between doses of vaccine. Jay, because there aren't enough doses to go around. Was Premier Ford in charge of procuring vaccines? No. That's the former school teacher was in charge of procuring vaccines. The last time I checked, Jay, Prime Minister Trudeau. Here locally, we had Dr. Etches on my show last week. Dr. Etches was on my show and maintained that the school should be open, that the classroom setting is not a driver of transmission. 1 week ago. It's not in the classrooms. It's in the community. And a week later, it's been telegraphed, okay, that she was going to close the schools under her Section 22 authority if the Premier hadn't done so yesterday. She was probably going to make that announcement tomorrow. So I guess the logic is it's spreading in the community and not the classroom, so let's close the classroom and keep the children in the community instead of the classroom. Look, I never claimed to be the sharpest knife in the drawer, Jay. But you're a teacher. Maybe you can explain that to me. Rob Snow Show on City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me, people don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, we had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me. I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew it that we have to wait, and we knew it that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food, food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And yeah, all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
613-750-1310.
What is it with teachers that are afraid to come on the radio anyway? Calling David. I don't want to go on the radio. Just tell Rob this. I don't want to go on the radio. I don't want to go on the radio and defend my indefensible position most of the time. I don't want Rob to be able to sniff my stench of privilege. Come on. At least, if you have a position, just call and defend it, okay? Let's debate it. I was actually coming around to seeing it through the eyes of an Ontario teacher, a poor, hard done by Ontario teacher, okay? But not when you call and you're like yelling at the producer and you don't even have the courage to come on the radio and air your own grievance. Like, get with it. Get real. Okay. All right. 750-1310. 750-1310. Jake Tapper, he has a show on CNN, right? Big political show on CNN. And Mr. Trudeau was in Jake Tapper's sights yesterday, along with his reporter, Paula Newton, who took a look at the vaccination rollout in Canada, not letting Mr. Trudeau off the hook, a rather hard-hitting piece. So let's roll tape. This is from CNN. This is CNN.
Some bad news for our neighbors north on our world lead. Canada is now outpacing the United States in terms of coronavirus cases per capita. This is a concerning uptick, considering that the Canadian vaccine rollout is not going well at all. By comparison, in the U.S., more than 1 in 3 Americans have gotten at least their first shot. In Canada, fewer than 1 in 5 received their first shot. CNN's Paula Newton now finds out what's causing Canada's vaccine drought.
And that's hard to stomach. It's really hard to stomach.
Doctors frustrated, exhausted as a growing third wave of COVID cases spreads across Canada, even more serious than the first two. And vaccines are arriving far too late to stem the surge. One horrifying look inside Canadian ICUs filled to capacity and beyond, and it's clear, doctors say, Canada's vaccine shortage is now their problem.
We went through a period where we were rapidly trying to immunize our healthcare workers, both first and second doses, to all of a sudden we're not getting the supply that we thought we would. We have nothing. And it went down to, I remember weeks where there was no vaccine. Vaccines change the game of this pandemic.
And Canada is still on the losing end. For a country that had categorically claimed to have secured more doses per capita than any other in the world, doses have not arrived in time, and doctors say the early vaccine drought will cost lives. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada no longer has any domestic production capacity for vaccines, and unlike the US and the UK, was not able to ramp up domestic manufacturing. So Canadians are at the mercy of imports, not even from their American neighbor, but from Europe.
We continue our discussions with the American administration on getting more doses into Canada.
The Biden administration sent 1.5 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine to Canada in recent weeks, but there is no announced plan so far to send more. And from Europe, Canada has received more than 8 million total doses, all of it not enough for a country of nearly 38 million people, forcing most Canadians, including frontline workers, to get only one dose, with the second shot postponed as long as 4 months. That's prompted the head of the world-renowned University of Ottawa Heart Institute to plead with the Ontario government to quickly get a second dose to medical staff.
It's not a small problem, Paula. It's not a small problem. People are exhausted. We see staff not coming to work because they may have COVID. Are not so sick. They are not hospitalized, but they have symptoms. They stay home even with a potential one dose.
And the weeks ahead will be more gut-wrenching still. Many provinces are now locking down and triaging and transferring patients, activating surge capacity in its healthcare system that is now under threat of COVID-19 like never before. And Jake, look, this is a problem. You have to rewind decades to really get to the heart of this problem, but that doesn't let the Trudeau government off the hook. They've been in power for more than 5 years. They heard the dire predictions. This country for decades had a competitive advantage in making vaccines. The research was right here. But look, Canadians will now pay for that complacency. Trudeau promises that domestic manufacturing will ramp up next year. Jake, you and I both know it's just too late at this point in time. This third wave is punishing. I am speaking to doctors, especially in the hotspot of Toronto. You know, Jake, they are letting people into the sick children's hospital, adults, in order to be able to treat them for COVID. A lot of things to talk about here, including the fact that even though the dire predictions were there, no government acted for decades on the vaccine rollout.
Yeah, it's a real failure by the Trudeau government, and our Canadian cousins deserve a lot better. Paula, thank you so much for that. I appreciate your report.
Failure by the Trudeau government. Our Canadian cousins deserve a lot better. From whatever that show is called on CNN, Jake Tapper. The Lead? Okay, The Lead. But that was, a damning indictment from Paula Newton yesterday. I mean, you can almost hear it. Jake, how much of a gong show is Canada? Grown-ups go to the sick kids' hospital, okay? Grown-ups in the children's hospital. That's what's going on in Canada right now. Crazy. Anne, you're on City News. Good morning, Anne.
Hi. It's funny that we have to look to American media to call Trudeau out for the bad job he's doing. Because, this dog-eat-dog thing of we want to be vaccinated first wouldn't be happening if we had enough vaccines. And that teacher who called, he just makes the point. They have been whining from day one, their union has, get teachers vaccinated first. I'm sorry, if I'm looking at a pecking order, first of all, there's the old people. Then there's people who are healthcare workers. I'm sorry, how many times have we heard healthcare workers in the Heart Institute haven't even had 2 shots yet, and they're getting COVID? And, I mean, that is who needs to be prioritized. That and people who work in congregate settings like warehouses and places like the Amazon,
warehouse,
you know what I'm saying? That.
Yeah.
Like, if you're looking at a teacher, they have a cohort of 30 kids in front of them every day. How many people does the clerk at Costco have walking in front of them? Random people, probably 1,000 a day. I mean, I've never done the math on that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I'm sorry.
Hundreds, you would have to think hundreds, right?
And Vera Etches, we heard it on your show. She said they have been tracking this from day one.
Yeah.
That is data. I'm sorry, it's not the most dangerous place to be for a kid in school. And I'm just so sick of this. It's turning into a class war, And like, with all due respect, I mean, I'm 66, so I'm getting my shot next week. Thank you, praise God, and all of that. But I'm going to have to wait till August to get my next one, so I'll just have to be careful. But I'm not going to start whining and say I should get my second shot before healthcare workers. That is just making teachers look so bad.
Well, I mean, in that CNN piece, they had the University of Ottawa Heart Institute president on.
Yes.
Speaking about how frustrating it is, the lack of vaccine availability for his frontline healthcare workers at the Heart Institute.
Yeah, I know.
So, and we did that interview like 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
All right, Ann, thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay, bye. Yeah. A few minutes left here. Brendan, Blackburn Hamlet. Morning,
good
Brendan.
morning.
Hi, Brendan. What's up?
I watch your program and
How am I doing, Brendan?
oh man, I'll tell you, compared to what bull that goes on in the States is remarkably honest.
My fiance
I
just texted me and said I'm too mean to the teachers, and that I've been picking on the teachers ever since she's known me. So,
well, my wife was an emergency nurse, and God bless them, and God bless the teachers and the children. I'm concerned about the B117 and the P1 more than I am about COVID.
Okay.
The young children should be vaccinated, and the teachers are very vulnerable. And, they should set up a system where CHEO,
should we not then, Brendan, ask ourselves, why aren't teachers getting vaccinated? In the United States, it was in the New York Times. I mentioned this about a week and a half ago. 80% of all the education workers in the United States have already been vaccinated. I put it to Sam Hammond from the Teachers Union. It's not even maybe it's 5% have been vaccinated even once of a 2-dose vaccine. It's very discouraging what's going on.
If you were a politician who wanted to be reelected, you had better be on side with the...
with the teachers? Absolutely, sir. You have to get along with the teachers. There are, how many of them are there? 200,000? And every teacher is married to somebody or living with somebody, or everybody has a daughter who's a teacher or a son who's a teacher or a brother who's a teacher. And by the time you anger 200,000 teachers, you've actually peed off 1 million people. It's classic Ontario politics. Sure, you have to have the teachers on your side. You don't want to upset the teachers. They're very powerful voting bloc. Arash, you're the last call. We got to make it quick, buddy. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. So I just have a couple of quick notes. And yes, we have to ask the Trudeau government that what the hell they are doing. I talked to my brother in Iran. And
in Iran,
he said, hey, how is Iran? Yeah, and how is the vaccine rollout? It's like we haven't got anything. 1 in 6 people got it. First shot out of 2. And he asked, don't you guys have any media? Don't you guys have any leverage to force your government? You don't know how bad we are looking. I am an immigrant. I know how Canada looks from in eyes of someone who is not a Canadian. Canada was great, but the heaven for healthcare and all the technology and things that are related to healthcare. And now you're lacking stuff. For God's sake, raise your voice, say something. It's stupid. I told my brother, you guys are gonna be ahead of us soon. Because you, out of nowhere, you guys are going to say, hey, we got 10 million Chinese ones better than nothing, and they're going to be ahead. I'm not saying just go ahead with administering anything.
All right.
And just the last point,
yep.
The one vaccine Canadian, Sam Lanimab, 500,000 doses in Canadian, 500,000 doses administered in U.S., not one in Canada. Why?
Okay, thank you, Arash. Good questions. All good questions. Thank you to everyone who called and for caring. Even you, Brendan, the teacher. God bless you. Who was that? The teacher? Jay. Okay. Yeah, Jay from Carp. Okay. The 11 o'clock news is coming up, and then we'll talk about chaos in the neighborhood park. Should curfews be imposed in the neighborhood park? Riley Brockington, City Councillor for River Ward, including Mooney's Bay, Party Central, coming right up on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
In Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, April 13th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 11 degrees. It's 10 degrees in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A worker at the Montfort Hospital facing sex assault charges involving at least 2 adult patients. Ottawa police say 59-year-old Ronald Dupuis of Ottawa facing 2 counts of sex assault, and the police believe there could be other victims. Investigators with the sex assault unit say charges relate to incidents at the hospital between December 2016 and January 2017, as well as November 2019 to January 2020. Latest COVID numbers for the province show a move below 4,000 for the day, but still 3,670 new cases today. Of that number, 214 are in Ottawa, 32 in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, 19 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 15 new cases today in Renfrew. In Toronto, 1,016 more COVID-positive people. Now, this comes from just over 42,000 tests. That means the positivity rate in Ontario is now over 10%. The province also says 15 more people have died in the last 24 hours from COVID. It's a grim new record at the Ottawa Hospital. Another 5 patients admitted to ICU. Now 21 patients in one of those beds with 63 total patients suffering from COVID symptoms. Dr. Virginia Roth tells City News that while they're accepting patients from the Toronto area, they're also moving their own patients around.
We work regionally with all the hospitals in the region to make sure patients have access to the care they need. So we have transferred, I think, 26 patients in the last couple of weeks to other hospitals in the region.
Now, the chief of staff also says they're working on retraining nurses to help out in ICUs. The hospital also confirming over 17,000 non-urgent elective surgeries delayed as of last week. That number is set to rise. City News Time, 11:04. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Temperatures well above average for us again today. Slight chance of some showers, some sunny breaks, and the high 18 degrees. Tonight, mainly cloudy and 7, and tomorrow some showers, otherwise mainly cloudy and 18. That's the high for today, 18.
And right now in Smiths Falls, it's 10 degrees. It's 11 in Ottawa. MPP for Ottawa Centre calling on the Minister of Education, Stephen Lecce, to resign over his handling of the situation within schools amid this pandemic.
Ottawa Centre MPP Joel Harden says by the government closing schools after Minister Lecce said they would be opening following the break, it shows they do not take the virus seriously and care more about the press conferences. He feels Lecce hasn't been honest with the public over safety by omitting some information or only talking about specific schools.
He has been more interested in spin and trying to please the public than telling the truth. And that's a problem. Anytime you do this in politics, you got to step down.
The MPP adds it doesn't matter what party someone belongs to, but if you put staff or students in danger, you have to go. Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca is also included in those calling on Lecce to be removed as minister, while also urging the Ford government to adopt the Liberal plan for implementing additional safety measures in schools. Alex Gouge, City News.
And the U.S. is recommending a pause in the use of COVID-19 vaccine approved for use in our country, but not yet available. It's investigating 6 reports out of 6.8 million doses of blood clots, possibly linked to a single-dose Johnson & Johnson shot. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
What should be done about the situation in local parks? We have a curfew, crowd limits, mask mandates. Let's hear from Councillor Riley Brockington of River Ward. Good morning, Councillor.
Good morning, Rob. Thank you for having me on your show.
Great pleasure, sir. What was the situation like in your ward in some of the parks on the weekend? For example, Mooney's Bay.
Well, it's been well advertised and covered. Certainly, Mooney's Bay and the neighboring Vincent Massey Park were settings for what appeared to be large gatherings of people. I certainly saw myself Mooney's Bay, an 80-acre plus park, well used, well loved. But many reports of large groups of people sort of in the same party or gathering maskless. And that's sort of not on for a lot of people, given where we are with the pandemic.
Right.
And Mooney's Bay was very popular last year, despite the lack of festivals. It was a destination, which is great. I love the park, and I want people to come and enjoy it responsibly. But there are too many examples of large groups gathering and just flaunting rules that most of us have been following for 13 months now.
Okay. What did you witness in terms of enforcement, for example? Was that to your satisfaction?
No, I don't believe that has this year started to any great degree. I do know that bylaw was overwhelmed with up to 600 calls for service basically on the weekend, which was a lot more than what they could handle. Mm-hmm. They did attend to many settings, and I know charges were laid in some cases, but really last year the city was very reactive to what was happening, and what I've been suggesting over the last week is let's be proactive and have a plan. Let's come together and say, particularly in our large parks, I'm not as concerned about sort of smaller neighborhood parks. Large parks, we know a number of people come to gather.
Right.
We need to have a plan, and that's where the talk about, you've heard a number of things recently, whether it be a park curfew or capacity limits, park ambassadors, bylaw, who have on their beat on a daily basis come to Mooney's Bay Park as an example to look at key things they want to enforce. It's not just people who aren't adhering to public health guidelines. We have chronic issues about people smoking in parks, dogs in parks, other things that bylaw can be kept busy with.
Drinking in parks.
For sure.
Right? Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And the dynamic changes at night, Rob. You sort of have a more passive, family-oriented groups that come during the day, church groups as well. And at night, basically the park isn't lit, which is another issue, and you have
but the people in it are. That's the problem.
The party continues. That's right.
Yeah.
So look, go ahead.
Should there be a curfew? in parks.
And I'm uncomfortable with that to begin with, but I think what we have to be guided by is the public health issues and the risks associated with the new variants, which are just out of control right now in Ottawa. I think in the short term I can back this. Certainly something I was floating yesterday. I see the mayor as well today coming out talking about a potential 8 p.m. curfew. I really do want to see that in the short term. I hope that does not last the whole summer. I do want to get a control of our numbers and get the parks open up for everyone to use. But in the short term, I definitely think that's the right way to go.
Okay, well, the mayor wants an 8 p.m. curfew in all city-run parks.
Right.
Do you think there should be an 8 p.m. curfew in all city-run parks? If that came up for a vote, would that get your
yes,
support? Or?
I'd want to, with Ottawa Public Health input and Parks and Rec talk about the seriousness of what's going on as far as COVID goes, but I would want that to be reviewed, just like the mask bylaw. We review this every 2 months. I'd want the same commitment that this would not be a decision without any endpoint. I do think we would need to come back maybe in 2 months and have the same discussion.
Yeah, like a sunset clause or whatever, right? We'll review it every so often.
Yeah, the parks are very busy in the summer.
Yeah.
And I want to...
You must have some sympathy, though, for people, people living in apartments, people living in multi-unit residential buildings with, very little green space, and they've been cooped up all winter, and
absolutely.
They've been kind of set free now, right?
Large number of my residents live in buildings. I early on in the pandemic last year wrote to the Premier and the Minister of Health and talked about and advocated for getting parks open. You may remember parks were closed. Little grannies tying their shoes, stopping.
Oh, yeah, people are being ticketed on park benches at one time.
And that's not on for me. Closing parks is not on, or green spaces. But I do think we need to be mindful about how serious things are. And if you're going to come to large parks where large numbers of people are present, there should be additional
staff
guidelines in place. That's right.
For example, how could this work at a place like Mooney's Bay, for example? I mean, you do have entrances and exits. Could you, establish a counter-type system? There are this many people. The park is this big. There are this many people in it. Okay, sorry, there are 200 people in the park. You can't be number 201 or whatever. How would you manage something like that?
Well, that's a challenging question. I mean, I know last year on Canada Day, the park was shut down. The number of people who were congregating, the police said up to 10,000 people, which is a huge number of people. I don't know. You could maybe at some point during the day know that you're approaching your maximums and have some sort of public messaging. But there's 3 main entry points into the park. Even though it's not fenced, there's 3 main sort of paved entrances. I'd like to see signage that just reinforces public health messaging. There's a PA system in the whole park. Like I've suggested, every hour on the hour you could have just reinforced messaging about the need for social distancing and wear a mask if you're going to be close to others. The beach gets busy. There's just so much to do.
Yeah.
And I want people to have that access, Rob. But I'm just saying, be mindful of what we need to do to reduce the risk of transmission. And if I'm going to keep the parks open and advocate to keep the parks open as a compromise in the short term, then we talk about perhaps wearing a mask and having a curfew. And I don't like that,
right,
but that's what I'm willing to accept in the short term.
Okay. Is there anything else that you think should be done outside of the park situation to help with containment right now because of the increasing case counts that we're seeing in the Ottawa area, Councillor?
I'm not a fan of warnings from bylaw anymore. We're 13 months into this, so if you're planning parties or gatherings, if you're the host in your private residence and it's Party Central, I want you to get a ticket.
Right.
It's not fair and it's not right. And I have residents across the city for 13 months now who have made sacrifices, personal sacrifices, to adhere to the public health guidelines. And they don't like it, but they're doing it because it's in the greater good for our residents. And they see people like this past weekend gather, whether it's at Vincent Massey or Mooney's or anywhere else across the city, not respecting those guidelines. And people are fed up. They're fed up with COVID. They're upset with others who are not adhering.
So
to
when you
these
have
rules.
conversations with the staff about the situation with bylaw, what are you hearing from the staff about the current protocol for enforcement right now? Are we still giving out warnings when people are flouting the rules right now? Councillor Brockington, are we still in some kind of warning phase? Because I'm with you, warnings. 13 months in.
They give have me a break. discretion. They're definitely writing tickets for the most egregious cases, and I'm sitting down with them at 8:30 tomorrow morning to go over a number of issues. But my message is clear. As I've just said, Rob, everybody knows the seriousness of this, and I don't accept from anyone that they don't know the rules, or they don't know what the expectations are. If you're planning large events, where you're increasing the risk of transmission, you need to be held accountable for that. And bylaw should use every power that they have. The challenge, Rob, is there's only a finite number of bylaw officers, and there continues to be many more gatherings of large people, which to me is completely unacceptable.
Okay.
And that has to be addressed. And so part of that conversation with bylaw tomorrow is to better understand their plan for 2021. The warm weather is here. We know people want to congregate and get outside, but that's part of it. Okay, how are we going to be successful this year? Not just showing up at the end of a night with tickets, but reinforcing the message with people so they don't gather to begin with. I think that's just as important.
Okay. So just the mechanics of this at the city council level, if the mayor says he wants an 8 p.m. curfew, chances are he could get an 8 p.m. curfew, just given his command of the council table and the votes. But how soon could this happen? Could the mayor introduce this tomorrow as part? The council meeting is tomorrow, is it not? There is a council meeting.
Yeah, there's council tomorrow.
Could we have a curfew at the end of business of that council meeting tomorrow, or?
It's possible. I don't even know if it's going to come to council. I think there may be discretion that Parks and Rec through the city manager and or even
like a
Dr.
delegated authority kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. All right.
We have not, as a council, made a lot of decisions related to COVID this year, and that may confuse your listeners, but with the exception of waiving some patio fees and deferring when people can pay taxes, really decisions that are happening in the city have been made by Ottawa Public Health as far as the whole testing and vaccination outreach and their programs. So if there's an opportunity to have a public discussion on the merits of curfew or other requirements, mask use in parks, we should have it. The public deserve to have their elected reps have these conversations and contribute to that. But as far as who has the authority, our senior staff, our city manager, and or Dr. Etches can use her powers under extreme circumstances to enforce additional constraints or restraints in the parks.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Brockington, for the time this morning. Great to hear from you again.
Thanks, Rob.
Following
always a pleasure.
It with great interest. Councillor Riley Brockington represents River Ward. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
So the birth of absinthe was 2002, I think, 2003, and I was working at Urban Bistro, happily, where Allium is now. And then the space where Holland Cafe was came up. It's on the corner of Spencer and Holland. And I spoke to the landlord, and there's a lot of interest from a lot of other people, but he and I just, got along super well, and he put a lot of faith in me. So Carmen Turner is his name. He gave me the lease to the place and really pretty much gave me all the equipment in the place. I was really lucky. I've been really lucky with landlords that way, actually, both my current landlord and Carmen Turner. Because if there hadn't been Carmen Turner, there wouldn't have been Absinthe. So we were there for a few years and just sort of outgrew the place. And then now we're here. It's obviously been tough, and it's been tough for everyone. I mean, that's the, been the big democratic sweep of, like, in restaurants and the hospitality and the arts that we were talking about earlier. It's like everybody's been impacted pretty much the same. From everybody that I talked to, we're down 80%. We're climbing out now. I think one of the saddest things is like everybody, we went down to 2 employees from 25, and we're now at 4, and we're bringing 2 new people on this week, so we'll be at 6. So it's, little steps. So it's been tough. It's, I've got the most expensive clubhouse ever here, because some days you come and you don't do any business, but you're here. But I'm grateful for what I do have. I think everybody's optimistic now, not necessarily just about the vaccine, but about like the vaccine, spring, being able to be outside. I think you're going to see a lot of like pop-up things happen in parking lots and on sidewalks and all, and like that, rather than being actually inside somebody's commerce. I think we'd like to take it outside. I know my staff would. My staff like the outdoors now all of a sudden, all 4 of us. 6 soon. But we'll be doing some business in the patio in the parking lot, and we have a patio out front. And I think I hope other restaurants and stores will do the same. I hope that they take advantage of like the sidewalk and doing sort of, guerrilla marketing and stuff like that, and really shaking it up a bit. You can find us at Absinthe Cafe at 1208 Wellington Street West in Hintonburg, and you can find us online at absinthecafe.ca.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So I read with great interest the story in the paper this week in the Citizen about the Ottawa mask. The Ottawa mask, which was developed by CHEO in partnership with an Ottawa-based nonprofit called Eco Equitable. And a Calgary textiles company. It's an affordable medical grade reusable and washable mask that has an efficacy rate of 88%. And Dayre McNally joins me, Dr. McNally, ICU physician, clinical investigator at CHEO. And good morning, doctor.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm glad to hear.
Me okay?
I hear you just fine, doctor. Thank you so much. Tell me about the Ottawa mask. Why is the Ottawa mask superior to the regular everyday mask?
So it comes down to a couple of very specific things. So most of the masks that people use and are available for purchase fit into one of 2 categories. They're a cloth mask, usually without a filter, that provides some protection for sure against COVID and other infectious disease, but they don't filter out particles anywhere near as well as they should, or anywhere near as high as a medical grade mask. The other type of mask people can use are the single-use surgical or medical masks that are used in hospitals or clinics. What we wanted to do was to create a mask that bridged that gap, a mask that had higher particle filtration,
right,
and did so following sterilization or washing. Which is essentially what we've created, is something that people can use, feel safe when using, or safer than most of the cloth masks they wear, but also can wash and know that they're protecting the environment.
So high efficiency and reusable, right?
Correct.
Kind of like in that nice middle. So what kind of research went into developing what I would call the Ottawa mask then?
So, a number of factors come into play. So, and in no particular order, but you need a mask that's first off comfortable. a mask that works really well, but people don't enjoy wearing. That's uncomfortable to wear. So comfort was a big component of this, and the fabrics and fit are quite comfortable. And then fit is another important factor. So preventing air from leaking around the mask. What a lot of people don't think about is that it's the filtration matters, but preventing air from leaking around and forcing it through the mask and the filter is key. So we wanted to make sure that the mask had really good fit to avoid that leakage. And then third, that we were able to improve upon the filtration beyond what the vast majority of community masks achieve. So those three factors were sort of our guiding goals and principles.
Right. The fit, though, sounds like the fit is very important.
Yes, and that's sort of an unrecognized part of mask efficiency, is that you can have a filter that works really well, like, 90, 95, 99% filtration, but if the air isn't forced through the filter, then the filter can't do its job. So, having a mask that has a nice, comfortable but tight fit to force the air through the filter is critical.
Okay. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about the durability. For example, if I wash it, what happens to the mask? Does it maintain its durability? Give me a sense of that, Doctor.
I'm happy to. So, one of the nice things that happened in the past few months was just to give you some numbers to benchmark against is the American Society of Testing Materials, and that's the same organization that gives specifications for surgical masks and N95 masks. Is they came out with recommendations for consumer community masks, and they set a target. Could change in the future, but they set a target right now that a good high performing community mask should achieve 50% particle filtration efficiency after new. Our mask, despite or even after 50 washings, like home laundering, cold water, it still achieves above 70% particle filtration. So we're very happy with that. So new, it does better, but even after 50 washings, it's above 70% particle filtration.
I see. And is it one size fits all, or does it come in various sizes, or?
Oh, great question. Thanks for asking that.
All right.
We initially had one size, but after we did some testing here at CHEO and had staff that are used to wearing masks for long periods of time test and give feedback, and we recognized the need to have a couple of different sizes. So we have two adult sizes, a small and a large, and the small fits teens as well, and then we have a smaller size intended for younger children. So we have three sizes, and then we have three colors. We have a black, recognizing that that's a common mask color, and then we've got two colors, which are, CHEO colors. They're sort of a purple and a green.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Well, look, Doctor, I thank you so much, first of all, for coming up with the idea, for working on it with your partners as well. And it sounds like a great effort that could protect a lot of people. I thank you so much for telling us about it this morning.
No problem. My pleasure.
Yeah, that's Dr. Dayre McNally from CHEO. So they'll do a run of 1,000. They're $25 each. But again, you can wash them 50 times, and they're still more effective than the regular run-of-the-mill, off-the-shelf mask. And the website where you can buy them, ecoequitable.ca, or at Cardish Health Food Center, the stores around town, and all the proceeds go back to CHEO if you buy those masks. So it's 11:28. We're back right after the news. The Prime Minister will do a news conference. There'll be lots of questions you can bet about the Johnson & Johnson news this morning, but the news is coming up right now here on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Tuesday, the 13th of April. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buck, and right now in Ottawa and in Smith Falls, we have some sunshine, a few clouds, 13 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. For the first time in its 47-year history, CHEO is preparing intensive care beds for possible transfer of adult patients requiring critical care due to COVID-19. In a release, hospital CEO Alex Munter says the move is unprecedented in the hospital's history and reflects the seriousness of the pandemic's third wave. The hospital, which has been running at or near capacity through the winter and into early spring, is planning to expand beyond surge capacity to accept COVID patients aged 40 years or younger. CHEO has 7 ICU beds. The plan is to expand to 12 while minimizing impact on pediatric care and services. Provincial health officials report 214 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa out of 3,670 new cases across the province. Ontario reporting 15 new deaths due to the virus. The numbers out of over 42,000 tests. Hospitalizations, number of patients in ICU and on ventilators, all up. 1,822 people in this province are hospitalized, 626 of them in intensive care. This is because of COVID, and 422 of those ICU patients are on ventilators. Elsewhere locally, 32 new cases in Eastern Ontario. Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit reports 19 new cases, 6 of those in the past 24 hours. There are 15 new cases in Renfrew County. Now, the local health units will update their numbers in the afternoon. Quebec is reporting 1,490 new cases of COVID-19 today, and 12 more people have died. The health department says the number of hospitalizations and patients in ICU up in that province. Locally in the Outaouais, 245 new cases of the virus in the day's reporting. I'm Sarah Buchan for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So that's incredible news, isn't it? CHEO readying ICU beds to accept adult patient transfers, 40 years of age and younger, because of the pressures of COVID admissions at other hospitals. We're certainly following up on that breaking news. Here at City News, another big story today is public education, and the news that came out, well, less than 24 hours ago now, the Premier announcing that schools will not reopen after the delayed spring break. This was Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, just yesterday.
My friends, no one wants our kids in school more than I do. That's where they belong. But with COVID spreading like wildfire, with these deadly variants taking hold in Ontario, we simply can't be too cautious right now. We have to be proactive. And when it comes to keeping our kids safe, I will never take unnecessary risk. That's why, based on consultation with Dr. Williams and our health officials last night, today we're taking further action. We're moving school online only after the April break.
Online only, and this is Stephen Lecce, the Education Minister, same briefing.
Now, despite these efforts, we recognize the threat posed by rising numbers of COVID-19 cases, increasing hospitalization, and the pressure our healthcare system is experiencing as a result. This worrying trend will leave us in an impossible situation if we do not act immediately. And that is why, in consultation with the Chief Medical Officer of Health, we have made the decision to move elementary and secondary students across the province to remote learning following the April break.
Okay, so Marit Stiles is the NDP MPP for the riding of Davenport and is the official opposition's education critic. And she joins me once more this morning on City News. Good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think about the decision, Marit Stiles?
Well, I guess I would say I think it was inevitable. I suspect that a lot of parents listening right now assumed this was probably coming because we could see where the numbers were taking the province. And what was really, I think, difficult in the last few days is that we've had the government continue to say over and over and over again. I mean, the Minister of Education on Sunday sent a memo to every parent in this province saying, hey, school's coming back after April break. Schools are safe. And then less than 24 hours later, this happens. So I think we're confused. I think I probably am like a lot of parents. I'm frustrated and angry. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we should be in this position. I think we shouldn't have gotten to this place. And I got to say, I think like a lot of families, right. I'm blaming Doug Ford.
Okay. So why do you think we are where we are then?
Well, you and I have talked about this a fair amount. Like, there's a lot of things that the government has been not doing that they should have been doing, that education experts, health experts, and us in the opposition have been warning them needed to be done, right? They should have reduced the class sizes. They should have put in place asymptomatic testing faster, better. There's so much ventilation work that should have been done, paid sick days. There's a long list. But I think at the end of the day, what we've seen is that this government, overall, has failed us. And it's particularly when it comes to schools, the fact that we all agree that schools should be the first to open, the last to close. Our kids desperately need this, but here we are. And really, at the end of the day, it is because those protections were not put adequately in place.
Okay, but it's hard to know sometimes, though. In all fairness, Marit Stiles, what does the opposition really want? I mean, last week you're saying schools. Something has to be done in the schools. Schools are dangerous. Schools are a source of transmission. We're really worried about schools. The Premier finally moves. Maybe he doesn't move fast enough for your liking, but he finally moves and he closes schools. I mean, are you just opposing the government for the sake of being in opposition?
No, we've been very consistent. Okay. Look, I've been super consistent that this is, we want to keep schools open. And I think what's important is it's been frustrating because, again, you hear from education workers on the front line and parents and students all saying, look, we want to do everything possible to keep these schools open. And we have pushed them for this. So is this the right decision? Yeah, I think we have no choice. Is it frustrating? Yes. Could they have done better? Absolutely. And I think what I'm channeling, I guess, is the thousands of parents and students I'm hearing from who are really frustrated. And it is a sad day. I think yesterday was a sad day for a lot of families, a lot of parents having to talk to their kids about not being able to return to the classroom. And the worst thing is we don't know when they will. And I guess the other thing I'm going to be, starting to push for even more is that the government needs to start talking and thinking and have a plan in place for what I would call education recovery. Our kids are going to need a lot of support coming out of this disaster.
Yeah, I'm wondering this kind of open-ended situation where it's closed indefinitely. How unsettling is that for you, Marit Stiles, at this point?
Yeah, and I think that's, look, we know that just by way of example, a lot of our kids, a lot of youth and children are struggling right now with anxiety already, with mental health issues. To have that kind of uncertainty at this time is even harder. And look, I want to say to all the parents who are listening right now, these are important things to share and talk about with our kids, that we feel the same way. It's unnerving, but we will come out of this. We will come out of this together, and we will work together to make sure that we're all supported. But yeah, I mean, I am really concerned about it. I'm concerned about the toll this is taking, and I don't blame any one person for some of that, because the truth is this pandemic has hit us all and has hit everybody around the world. But I think at this stage, many people, including myself, thought we would be in a better situation than we are, and so it is frustrating.
Okay.
And yeah.
So, physically inside the school, there's some downtime, obviously. There are lots of questions. I took some this morning. Some teachers called and wanted to know about, vaccines. Everybody wants to know, when am I getting a shot? When am I getting a shot? How best could the government spend this time, Marit?
One of the things that we've been pushing for is to get the government to use this April break, frankly, as an opportunity to get a lot of those education workers vaccinated. And, very late in the day last week, they sort of made this announcement they were going to start that. But unfortunately, they didn't tell the public health units before they made the announcement, or the school board. So there's a lot of people who are desperately trying to register right now. I know that the rules are different depending on what area you're in, if you're in a high-risk area or not. And you have to wait till your board provides you with the information about how to register. But, all credit to the education workers who are trying to do it, because the most important thing we all know right now is to get as many people vaccinated as possible. And for sure, those workers, they are on the front line. The government didn't want to put them there, but they are on the front line. And we know that schools are a source of transmission, so we got to get this done, and the government needs to ramp it up really fast.
Okay, I know this is not your portfolio. You're primarily primary, secondary education, public education, not colleges and universities, and that your caucus colleague Lindo is that's her portfolio. But I must ask you, just while I have you on the line, about the news about Laurentian University. We have a public university it's insolvent. Professors have been laid off. Hundreds of programs are being eliminated, creating a lot of uncertainty. What's your reaction there? What do you think is going on there? What's the problem?
Well, look, I mean, we've been looking for the minister who's responsible, Roth Romano. We've been looking for him for a while now, and we can't find him. They've gone underground, I guess, because this should never have gotten to this place. And so I feel really badly for all of the staff who've been laid off. I know there are students across this province who go to Laurentian, but I also want to say particularly, a university like Laurentian also really serves a lot of students and folks in the north that otherwise might not, a lot of first generation kids going to university. And so this is a big blow. It means that some really important programs are going to be lost. And the government really had an opportunity here to step in, I think, and do something to save some of those programs. And they just didn't do it. So it just, to me, it says, something about how this government values not just post-secondary education, but understands what an important role they play in our economy locally, right? And so it's going to be a big blow also to the region and to Sudbury.
Okay. I thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Rob.
That's the education critic for Ontario's New Democrats, the official opposition. At Queen's Park, that's Marit, Stiles, Davenport, the riding there. When we come back, Mr. Trudeau is speaking right now, the Prime Minister. He'll be taking some questions. I'm sure there are a number of questions that he will have to have an answer for, particularly when it comes to the news from the FDA and the CDC in the United States recommending a pause of the single-dose Johnson & Johnson vaccine. His government has procured up to 38 million doses of that vaccine. So when we come back, you'll hear the reporter's questions for the Prime Minister today. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
It's a space that needs to be lived in. It's a space that people have to have an experience of more than just art on the walls. I think, yes, the art on the walls is fun, and it's fun to walk around and see all the beautiful things, and the way Dominic and Edith have curated the gallery is certainly something worth seeing. But coming by and asking questions, again, to Dominic's point of view is, interrupt him, ask questions. I'm here on most of the days too. We have Luce that comes in, Nancy that comes in. So yeah, we have quite a few opportunities for people to come in and see the process, and of course ask a few questions. It's a great space. Basically, the one event that we did do, is the jazz shows, the jazz and blues shows. And I think the weird thing to let you know is that the acoustics in here are really amazing. I think that was the first thing that blew me away when we started doing shows, or when I was helping out with the shows. The other part of the business too is we do rent it out for special occasions too. So a few weddings, birthday parties, product launches, that kind of thing. So they're also a lot of fun. We do have one artist that's from the States, but of the 30-odd artists, the rest are from either Quebec, Ontario, and one beautiful woman from BC. But yeah, it's definitely part of the philosophy to maintain and canvas and show the beauty that we have in our backyard. You have the very, very strong personalities in Edith and Dominic, of course. It's wonderful to see how that actually balances out in the rest of the gallery. Without necessarily being, an objective, we basically have half female artists and half male artists in this gallery. But I can't say it's anything more than choosing the best people, and that's just the way it is. And I love that. I think it's great. You go through here and you're like, wow, it's all pretty cool. And yep, it's half are women and half are men. It's cool. Like everyone else, we didn't know what to think, right? It's overwhelming at first. You just know that things are closed. And now you're trying to figure out what you do during that downtime, which I think everyone did. And I think in March, the first close, the first shutdown, it was a lot of actually recuperating and resting and not worrying too much on the spot. It's running a gallery is a bit like running a marathon with sprints. So there comes a time where, it's actually nice to just take a break. And then you wake up and realize that, okay, now it's time to wake up and deal with this new reality. From my perspective anyways, I think a gallery can be overwhelming, and I like to make it fun. So you're going to come in, I'll ask you questions, I might even joke around with you. The most people come here, they're not really going to buy art, but they could have a fun time and talk about it, right? And one of the things the gallery does offer is for local purchases, we'll be happy to drive it to your house and hang it for you.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Okay. So the Prime Minister is attending this briefing today. The regular 11:30 thing, but lately he's been joined by health officials, and this is Dr. Theresa Tam.
Strict public health measures will continue to be crucial during this phase of vaccine rollout, especially in the presence of high rates of disease. To date, over 1,071,000 cases of COVID-19, including over 23,350 deaths, have been reported in Canada. Over the past week, there has been a 33% rise in daily case counts, with an average of almost 8,100 new cases reported daily. During the same time, the number of people experiencing severe and critical illness continues to rise. On average, over 3,000 people with COVID-19 were being treated in our hospitals each day, representing a 29% increase over last week. This includes almost 970 people being treated in intensive care units, which is a 24% higher than last week. Although the number of deaths has averaged around 30 each day for several weeks, there is concern that if the increase in severe illnesses persists, we could see a gradual increase in the mortality trend. With today's average at 34 deaths daily over the past week, today's average at 34 deaths daily over the past week. There are almost 36,000 variants of concern cases reporting to date across Canada, with the B117 variant accounting for over 96% of these. These trends are discouraging, but they reinforce why we must strengthen precautions to bring this variant of concern-driven resurgence under control quickly. This is the third big push, and we're all tired but the benefits of applying our strongest collective effort by following public health advice and strictly maintaining individual precautions could not be greater. This push will enable us to focus more capacity towards vaccine rollout. Two great examples of this unified effort I will highlight today are from Nova Scotia. We have recently learned of a vaccine clinic organized for Black Nova Scotians in the Hammonds Plains community, just outside of Halifax. The clinic was held at the historic Emmanuel Baptist Church, which has long been an important fixture in the community. Coming together in solidarity to receive COVID-19 vaccines is a testimony to the community's perseverance and commitment to ensuring people feel culturally safe in the vaccination process. I also heard about a pharmacist in Cape Breton who converted an old ambulance into a mobile clinic to bring COVID-19 vaccination to seniors and people with mobility challenges. There are so many examples from individuals to organizations finding ways to help others and make sure that we all end this crisis together, stronger and more united. Finally, on our current trajectory, it might seem premature to think of the days when restrictions will ease and social and economic activities will resume. But if we want to take forward the things we've learned about the importance of family, community, and equity, about how we supported each other, adapted, and innovated, we must commit to acting thoughtfully, clear in the view of what we want to take forward. The end of this crisis will be a time of great change. Let's not race towards the finish and risk stumbling along the way. Let's make every step count by continuing at pace together. Thank you.
Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Alors que nous continuons d'assurer le suivi des données de surveillance actuelles par rapport aux prévisions modélisées à long terme établies, il y a un peu plus de 2 semaines, nous constatons que le nombre quotidien de cas augmente toujours selon une trajectoire liée à une forte recrudescence. Bien que nous remarquons les avantages de la vaccination contre la COVID-19 chez les groupes à risque.
This is the update. We had expected for a question and answer session, but they're going to go through some opening remarks from the health officials right now. And Dr. Tam opened her remarks, and now Dr. New, it's his turn. He'll repeat much of what Dr. Tam said in French. There are a number of things the Prime Minister will have to address during this briefing. First and foremost, one would expect, is the breaking news this morning out of the CDC and the FDA calling for a pause. A pause is how it's being described in the administration of the J&J vaccine, the Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine, because a very rare risk of blood clots in the United States. You know, this is very much kind of a repeat of the AstraZeneca news, isn't it? The FDA and the CDC, both out of the U.S., both recommending this immediate pause in the use of the Johnson & Johnson single-dose vaccine, rare blood clots. 6 cases in all. In women, all of them in women between the ages of 18 and 48. Almost 7 million doses of this vaccine had been administered in the United States, 6.8 million. So in percentage terms, you're talking about 0.00008% of all doses given of this particular vaccine in the United States. But this is the single-dose vaccine. Held great promise because there's no waiting. You think in the case of Canada, no waiting 4 months between doses. It's a single dose, one shot, and you are done. But now there's this recommendation again that there be a pause. Potentially. We'll see what they have to say. We'll be listening for what they have to say. But it's potentially a setback for the vaccination rollout for this country. This is approved in Canada. Health Canada has approved the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. No doses delivered yet. But the procurement agreement, such as we know. We don't know very much about it, but on the Government of Canada website, it says that the Government of Canada has agreed to acquire up to 38 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, single-dose vaccine, 38 million doses, that being the population of Canada. You know, as we wind down the program this morning, it has not been an encouraging day when it comes to the battle against COVID-19 in Canada this morning. The Calgary Herald ran with the headline this morning, Alberta on track to hit 2,000 daily cases, infections, 20,000 active infections amid alarming spread. In 2000, we had more than 3,500, 3,600 in Ontario today. Having 2,000 cases a day in Alberta is like having 7,000 cases a day in Ontario when you do kind of the ratio math. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney said COVID-19 cases are rising at an alarming pace. 1,136 more cases Monday, 679 of the variant first detected in the UK. Regina Leader Post goes this morning with, we are in exponential growth. SHA warns Saskatchewan doctors on COVID-19. The hundreds of daily cases reported in Saskatchewan are just the tip of the iceberg because testing rates remain low. Winnipeg, outdoor mask mandate, tighter restrictions on indoor activities considered in Manitoba. Vancouver Sun, Dr. Henry pleads with BC residents, stay close to home as pandemic worsens. Stay close to home. She is suggesting that people in British Columbia don't even leave their own neighborhood. And this is the Prime Minister. Let's hear what's the first question for the Prime Minister.
Questions for 20 minutes. Minister LeBlanc and doctors will remain available for more questions for another 15 minutes afterwards. One question, one follow-up, starting with the phone. Merci beaucoup, Dr. Nous. Le Premier ministre va répondre aux questions pendant 20 minutes et doit nous quitter par la suite. Le ministre Leblanc et les docteurs répondront à d'autres questions par la suite pour un total de 15 minutes. Une question, une sous-question, en commençant par le téléphone. Opérateur, c'est à vous.
Merci. Thank you. Please press star 1 if you have a question. Veuillez appuyer sur étoile 1 pour poser une question. Notre première question est de l'inaudible de la presse canadienne. À vous la parole. Please go ahead.
Oui, bonjour. J'aimerais savoir si les derniers développements sur le vaccin de Johnson & Johnson changent quelque chose à notre intention de commander les 10 millions de doses. Est-ce que ça retarde le contrat ou est-ce qu'on attend encore les premières doses
receive those doses that we are expecting?
Merci, Lina. On est dû pour recevoir nos premières doses de Johnson & Johnson à la fin du mois d'avril. Mais évidemment, on va continuer de regarder attentivement ce qui se passe aux États-Unis avec leur expérience. On continue d'être en discussion avec la compagnie et de comparer nos données avec tous nos partenaires.
So look, we're listening into that. Cormac McSweeney's our parliamentary correspondent. We're right at a time here on the Rob Snow Show. Notable by their absence.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.